Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Zoom Test Kitchen, the day after some of us filled our bellies full with Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoyed the holiday. I have not yet, and so I'm alive and well. I expect this meeting to might slide towards the quiet. I don't want to talk because I'm still stuffed category, but I hope not. But I understand where that might come from. We're celebrating tomorrow as far as being able to get family together and all. So I'm hanging in there and feeling pretty good. Anyways, welcome. I sent out, as many of you know, I sent out just a quick question. Ray had asked, and I'm glad you did. And I thought, yeah, I'll just ask everybody and see. I mean, there were definitely some folks that say, "Hey, I want to take the day off." That's all good. But there were plenty of people who actually said, "Hey, I'll be there." So anyway, we've got a few here, and maybe we'll have a few more roll in, but it'll be just a good work day. For some of you who showed up a little bit early when I get things rolling, about 30 minutes prior, sorry about the disconnects. but, but oh my goodness. I mean, the thing about the Zoom Test Kitchen is we want to do it. We want to get our hands on it and so forth. I have to kind of ride the line, and that is I have to have the function available for us when we're in the meeting. And the sign language feature, I thought I had it on properly, but I didn't. So I had to kill the meeting, go back to the portal, turn it on, restarted the meeting, only to find out I also needed to enable it in my scheduled recurring meeting that's been in the schedule forever, and so I had to kill it again, and so I'll show where those options are as well. But so I have not worked with it actually. I've read about it, and but I really wanted to kind of go at this, somewhat cold with everybody, so we could feel that together and get through it and see what the features are like and so forth. By all indications, I think it's a pretty cool implementation, and I'd like to prove that right or wrong, but I think it'll be pretty good. It gives the user, much like the captioning, the opportunity to turn it on and off, and I think resize and so forth. So I like just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I did a big church broadcast for my church, and we used to stream to our own platform that they had developed over the years, and they got rid of that July, maybe June, July, and had bought a really large enterprise license of Zoom. And so I used to send out, this stream for the audience who didn't need the sign language interpreter to be seen, and this one for the interpreters. And the big difference there was I always loved being able to have the sign language interpreter for that audience be large, not just a little, secondary picture in picture representation of it. And then I would send out a third one for our Spanish speaking audience. And but when we went to Zoom, I didn't want to have to deal with all that in the sense of three separate computers joining the meeting and so forth. So I wanted to just create one webinar, and so it is one feed, multi-language, right? Because Zoom handles that fine, but one feed, and it's a burned in feed, kind of fairly large. The majority of the picture is the primary speaker and program, English speaking program, and then a secondary window of a live sign language interpreter that is in the church building for a local audience, but also a remote audience. So everybody gets to see it, which at the end of the day, it's not tiny, so I did what I could size wise, but at the same time, I think it's really valuable to have non-required users, who don't require the signer, to actually see that we've paid attention to, that audience and those particular needs and so forth as well. So there's no harm done there. But anyways, welcome. Ray, hello. I'm going to pull the spotlight now, and if somebody wants to switch the show,
I came back a few times. You left. I came back. You left. I came back.
I know. Yeah.
I wasn't going to give up.
Everybody's thinking, did I disconnect or did Jeff disconnect? And so sorry about that. But look great. I love that green on that blue background, by the way. Looks super. This is our speaker coach, professional corporate speaker coach. And if you tune into office hours early, I learned this last week in one of those early moments that you used to be in charge of the pyrotechniques at the World Wrestling Federation back in the day too. So that was a new nugget. I've heard many of things, but that was a new nugget in particular. Oh, you're double muted.
It was WCW, not W. It wasn't Vince McMahon. It was the competition. Not much of a competition. That's why it only lasted 8 years. Vince had much more power than Ted Turner.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Pete, I see you next on my screen. Hello and welcome. And David and Frank.
Hey,
Robert. And let's see. Got John.
David, I want that cup.
Isn't this great?
Yes.
Yeah, you miss social distancing.
My daughters got this for me because they know I don't like people. So
yeah, you're a real people hater, David.
No, in the screen it's fine, but in person, I
don't get close to me, huh? I'll have to remember when we finally meet to just give you this never-ending hug, make you feel terribly uncomfortable. Very good. Yeah, Peter, you froze. Not sure what happened there, but anyways, and I see Harshit is here as well, so welcome. All right. Well, we've got the live stream going on YouTube. Got a few viewers out there. I'm gonna minimize that. I've got my Zoom window going here. See if I can get this shared and let you plug away with me on the sign language piece. Size things up.
Hey, while you're doing that, let me just ask a question of the other folks here.
Sure.
So I'm not in my regular studio today. I'm at home, and one of the things that I'm not sure I understand it fully is Zoom settings seem to not be account based. They seem to be client based. That is to say, right, if my client and my computer in my office is set up the way I want it, those settings are only persistent to that client, not
tied to the software.
Me.
Yeah, it's tied to the software install. Not they don't follow individuals by all indications. And
I'm gonna disagree. If you log into ZoomOS and you set your meeting preferences, they follow you no matter what device, as long as the device has the abilities. Like obviously an iPhone can't do everything a laptop can do, but the meeting settings,
the software client settings though. That's I think what
like what mic to use, what camera to use.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. But the meeting settings are portable. They live on the ZoomOS server.
I was thinking about things like, turn my camera off when I enter a meeting, or 25 versus 49 people on the gallery, things like that are, as you said, I think they're in the client. And it's frustrating because I sit down at a new computer assuming that it's going to work, just the way it always does for me. And then all of a sudden,
Yeah, even a preference like when I host this meeting, in one of the resets, I turned off dual screen mode in Zoom. I have vMix on one monitor and a single Zoom window on the other monitor, and It just works better for me. When I participate in meetings, in the audience, then I like dual screen so that I can have one dedicated to the share and active speaker. But when I'm the host of a meeting, then that's not my preference. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how how go about fixing that if it's a needed fix, but it's a little bit of a pain moving around. Even from, goodness sakes, I've got probably 6 computers that I use amongst my work week, and they're all in this office, and still, small adjustments depending on what whether it's my own stuff or a job I'm doing for somebody or whatever the case may be. Kind of lots of tweaking. The back end portal setting templates, I was starting to dig into that a little bit. They made an announcement that I think the way I heard it and interpreted it, because they've always had templates back there, but they were really kind of little, if you will, just a few settings that you could put under the options of scheduling a meeting. But my thought when I heard the announcement was that it may also apply in the near future to the back end portal settings as well, enabling this feature, disabling that feature, and so forth. May be able to be saved in a setting, but I don't know for sure. I don't have enough clarity on that. I don't see that available at the moment, but to have a template of the back end portal settings tied to a meeting in my world would be ideal, because yesterday or last night I did a job and I did have to use my account to host it, and I had to turn a bunch of stuff off and all those things, where then today's Zoom Test Kitchen where I enable just about everything, right? And
well, they're coming out with meeting templates. I wonder if settings would be attached to those templates, and if you could set up different templates.
I got excited when I heard the announcement, but at the same time, I can't really verify that it was anything other than my own assumption when I heard that announcement, because they've had templates back there. They have them right now. They've had them, but they never reached back to the back end portal itself versus just a meeting template. And so I don't know how deep they're going to go there. Anyways, well, here, let me share my Zoom screen. Oops, that was my vMix.
Jeff, when we get through with this piece, I have a Zoom Rooms question for later on in the show, if that's okay.
No, absolutely. All right, so that's what I'm looking at right now is my gallery view, and I'm going to pull over, get my toolbar up here too. There we go. All right, let me open up a browser and show you first where I went while I was resetting the meeting a couple of times. That is the correct account. So on this, if you're on a business and enterprise account, it's slightly different, like which set of settings, right? I technically I went under group management because I'm a member of a particular group, and so when I make changes on this account, which is provided by a guy at the DVE store, I made the mistake once of just making the change, and it was like the profanity list filter. And when I did that, I got a message from Guy the next day because his entire staff was now getting nagged in their meetings about, it was a warning that it's on and so forth. And so I had to undo that because it was interruptive to them, which makes perfect sense. And so I started just turning features on at my group level, which is where my account lives, versus global to his account. So, but I can run the example under the settings section just
Can you blow that up a little bit, Jeff, so we can see it better?
Yeah. That work? Let's see if I can.
That's better.
Make the screen bigger, so now I can see it's under in meeting advanced. And then if you scroll down from there, you'll see there's language interpretation here, and then there's also sign language interpretation. So enabling that and also making sure the box is checked to enable sign language interpretation view by default in the scheduler as well. And so when you're scheduling a meeting or whatnot, it will be an option there that you can turn on, like language interpretation. Language interpretation didn't used to work this way, in the sense that I'm going to turn the brightness down on my monitor right now. It's in my glasses big time. Darken that up a little bit. If you enabled it and then scheduling the meeting, you also had to kind of point to a dummy account. So I'd always like point to my own name because I was the only one there. Now you don't have to do that, and I don't think you have to do that here with sign language either. So you can just enable it. It's always available if you need it, and then you can take care of the rest in meeting. Any other experiences? Has anybody used this?
Wait, before you go, I don't know if you can go back to that, Jeff.
Yeah.
And please forgive me for being naive about this, but underneath it says enable sign language, but then there are 10 languages. So I know there are different versions of sign language, but are there versions of sign language for American, Chinese, French, and so on?
Yeah, I think maybe, I don't know for sure. Robert,
Hi,
I might lean
everyone.
towards you and ask you. I know there are different languages, but I don't know. Does every language have, or do they default to a language, kind of a base language when they need a signer, or how do they manage that? Are you aware?
You must, hi everyone. You need to go into the little bit of a history of sign language. It's more of a cultural thing. So communities of similar cultures will have a lot of similar signs that they use, but effectively all around the world, each country, each language has its own sign language. I mean, if you look at Latin American sign language, it's different from Spanish sign language in Europe because of the cultural effects that the sign language has adopted or grown with. But you're doing a great job, Jeff. It's good to hear someone talking about interpretation.
We can extend this into, don't limit to the verbal translation as well. One, I know you're super familiar with it, but I opened this gate a little bit on it too, because it's grown so much, with Zoom's, continued development as well. So things that you used to not be there. I mean, even just popping up this, window in particular. Let me see what I've got set up for zooming on the screen. There we go. That's the default. Nobody is assigned, but it's enabled, right? And so then you can start digging in and making things happen at the bottom. Add an interpreter, and adding an interpreter. Is it a language interpreter or a sign language interpreter? And then you start start adding those fields. So it really has just continued to grow and grow, which is super impressive in that sense. And it's just all integrated in versus the difficulty of streaming, if you will. Having it managed by the client application and so forth is great. So it's enabled, and it took me 2 whacks to get it all enabled properly, and I had to edit my recurring meeting. So if you're scheduling a new meeting, it will become a new option for you in that scheduler. And in my case, I've had this recurring meeting for 2 years now, and I just keep you can schedule up to 50 meetings, 50 future recurring meetings, and I just changed the date, and I don't deal with it. There's not a start date, but it kind of change how long you want this to go, and I just keep going, and I can either look at a calendar and count, or just keep choosing until it finally says 50 recurring meetings, because I know it won't go over 50. But so anyways, I made an edit to that, and away we go. So
Jeff, do you mind if I jump in every now and then when I see something? I think the first thing to point out is that we're seeing your screen where you have the interpretation icon in the menu. Mm-hmm. Us as users don't see it because we haven't started the interpretation. That's one of the important things. True. Before True. Jeff switches it on, activates it. The users don't have the option for interpretation.
Yeah. So further question to that is, here, let me, Ray is a co-host. Oh, David, I didn't make you a co-host. I always make you a co-host. And Robert, because your familiarity, and if anybody else wants this view, certainly just chime in. I'm just assigning a few co-hosts. So Ray, David, and Robert are now co-hosts. And the reason, and Ray was, now I've added 2 more. Ray always manages the waiting room. But with that, the reason for it is, my question is, can you see this interpretation icon and this window that I have here unconfigured but available to be configured? Can a co-host see that?
No, it's only the host who can see it. And this is the really important, because a lot of people get into a bit of a mess with this. So you need to have a user logged in who is the host, who sets up the interpretation. And what I do from experience is I set that up on a separate machine and then go and run the meeting as a co-host, just so that I don't affect the interpretation at all during the event.
Yeah. Have them side by side or something, or even temporarily giving somebody, host, having your interpreters arrive early enough, right, to give you and your team time to get it configured. But running the meeting as a co-host kind of feels weird saying it, but the fact is, for the most part, it does well. And it will force you, if you want to be able to recognize clearly what only a host, not co-host, but a host can do, and nobody else, start managing meetings as a co-host, and it will all come to light really quickly. There's a few things. Breakout rooms used to be, right, very limited to host only, and starting those now has opened up a bit. But as far as language interpretation and so forth, these are significant items. I mean, if you've got hundreds of people or thousands of people listening on different language channels and so forth, to have an oops moment, I didn't realize that was going to happen from a co-host, that's a major hit. So it something you don't want to have happen, for sure. So I put in the email that we'll talk about the sign language interpretation. So let's start there. Happy to do the audio as well if anybody wants to see it and feel it and so forth. But I'm going to go ahead and select. I apologize. Trying to click my mouse while I have this little Zoom window up is really, it's hard visually to me. My brain just doesn't register well. But I'm going to go ahead and tell it to add an interpreter, select sign language, and then the search by name. And so I will I'll take, we always like granularly test, can I assign anybody? Can they be a co-host? Can they not be a co-host, and so forth? And so I'm going to start with just a regular attendee, not somebody who is a co-host. And so Tony,
just one note here, Jeff. Yep. It's super important who the first sign language interpreter is, because that person will default into the window, the pop-up window that opens. So that's really super important who you choose.
Yeah,
as the
so
first one.
let's. I'm glad you bring that up, and then let's add to that interpreters' behaviors. Right? What are their required behaviors? And depending on the interpreter, I would imagine, depending on the difficulty of the language, when it's a language interpreter versus a physical sign interpreter, they have these trade-off times. Some can run for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and they have to roll it over, and so they have to have some signaling mechanism that cues their partner of when they're going to hand off to the next one. And so I don't know how sign language works that way in Zoom, but we're going to try to figure it out. Yeah, that's right. All right. So Tony, I've got you queued up to become the first sign language interpreter. And I've got you there. And then you can see that once I've assigned Tony, then a list of languages become available. And that's more about advertising to the audience what they can expect when they select that sign language channel or window, is what language they'll be signing. Certainly it puts no requirement other than the understood requirement to Tony, for instance, of what language he needs to sign for. But outside, it's like if he doesn't, nothing's going to happen except the audience will be a bit disappointed. All right, so we'll go American Sign Language with Tony, and I'll click on Start. All right, so it says it's available. Click here to get started on my screen. And should I stop sharing so you can see your screen normally right now? Will that be helpful? All right, let me kill the share.
And the first thing you'll notice, of course, is that we don't actually see the sign language interpreter on the screen in any other manner than he was initially. So Tony is just there as it was.
It's just a pop-up bubble that says it's there and available, right? And so the audience who needs to opt in, that's their notification, and they can opt in appropriately there. So I've got two other systems running here that I'll go ahead and see that. I say, watch. And so my watch says, if I pop it up, sign language off. I'm assuming everybody else sees that same thing. And or American Sign Language.
I have Tony on the screen in a window which I can resize to take up my whole screen if I want.
That's right. So I think I'm doing a capture here. So I'm gonna cut to me. I'm gonna spotlight me in the Zoom meeting.
John Drinkwater has a question. How will that person, the signer, be recorded?
It's not a feature yet. The sign language window is not recorded currently.
I think they just recently got, they do record ISOs of language translators, but yeah, I'm glad you know that already on the sign language side, which I would imagine will follow here shortly. So
I can't say much more about it. I'm under an NDA, but
yeah, I've been working with them.
Good things will come.
Yeah.
And Andre has his hand up for a while. Jeff, I think you might have a question during this.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Andre.
It's nearly the same direction. I was wondering if there is a possibility to record the language interpreters, including program video, so that you have not to edit it later, but can like hand out English, German, Spanish, whatever, record from the cloud, maybe. Because I had a interpreters webinar and meeting this week, and I only got the audio tracks of the interpreters.
Well, there's this. Hi, Andre. I hope this went well this week.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, there is the option to record the interpreter's audio channel now in the cloud. However, like you said, it's just a separate audio channel, and so you have to go and edit the film and put and overlay the interpreter's audio. The other option is to record it locally. And then on the local machine, you select the language that you want the audio to be in, and then you record it. And that's been the default mode for us up until now. And we're just testing the other way, because the challenge with having those Zoom audio files is that you have an audio file and you've got to sync it in onto a video file, and you don't have sync tabs of any sort, sync marks of any sort.
Yeah, that's what I did the whole day.
I know. And so I still prefer to record locally in each and every language, because even if I want to use a different video, at least in my editing tool, I can embed it and sync the videos visually, and then I know that the audios are in sync.
Okay, so but this would mean I would need a separate machine for each language to record it locally with like active speaker in full screen, right?
Correct,
I couldn't record this on the interpreters machines.
You can. You will get the interpreter's voice directly. However, the other thing is, if you do it that way, you need to make sure that the interpreters don't play with that recording during the event, because if they switch it off accidentally, then you've lost the recording. That's why I prefer to do it here in the studio, and I just have separate machines for each language channel.
It'll be interesting to see how they tie, if they tie, how they tie into this particular conversation with the end-to-end recording that they're working on. And so, would it be ideal for a host to be able to designate, hey, you, and you are going to do, local records, but it's under my control, not yours, right? And so it records locally. Will it, naturally record their language into the computer as a local record, and so forth. So it'll be good question maybe that we could throw out there, but they can always only say so much this early. But that may become, because after the meeting's done at that point, one, the host is in control of saying who is going to participate in those end-to-end recordings. And then when the meeting wraps, Andy explained that up to the cloud, it will start going, and it will be, a good quality recording. Now, I think the inspiration of the feature itself is more around video initially, so if they have bad bandwidth, we'll still get a good video recording because it's local, but I have to wait and see how it ties into what if that other
Is there any way to
interpreter.
enter Jeff is there any way to enter time code, hidden time code on either one of these? No,
not that I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of, and the only way you can do is do some sort of a clap or something that is that you can manage.
Well, or even I guess clap, so there's audio on both ends. Because it's not really a sync, right? I mean, you're not going to sync a different language to my lips, right? Speaking, because we're not speaking the same word, but it's program timed, right? You have to at least be near. And I don't know, Robert, is there some guide on how much? I mean, an interpreter, whether it's verbal or sign, is definitely delayed, till after it's been spoken. Is there an acceptable delay of time in the industry?
There is no standard per se, but that's what differentiates simultaneous interpretation from consecutive interpretation, because the consecutive interpretation goes literally sentence by sentence or group of sentences by group of sentences, while simultaneous is meant to be on the fly. The delay that usually comes through with a good interpreter that has all the material before the event and has been able to prepare is probably in the range between 5 and 12 seconds. But that's about it, except for certain languages, because if anyone here knows German, and Andre will tell us this, confirm this, you put the verb at the end of the sentence, so you don't know the tense until you've got to the end of the sentence. Yeah, so there are some languages that have some grammatical challenges.
It's worse than that. You actually don't know what's going on until you let the German speak the verb at the end.
Interesting. So Robert, if you had a meeting video recording, and then you had to bring together the separate language interpreted ISO audio together, would you be prone to tighten up that space, or even better align it to be closer to live, as close, and there's not really live, but instead of that 8 to 12 seconds, would you pull it in tighter just because you had the opportunity to post edit and then release the final product?
Well, the thing about simultaneous interpretation is that the people who are listening are expecting to hear the speaker first and then the interpreter. So if you tie that down to zero delay, then it seems as if the speaker, who's, for example, a man, has a female's voice if the interpreter is female. There's a mismatch, and that brings out a lot of confusion amongst certain people listening. The other thing is with the recordings, you got to keep in mind that Zoom is really, really good with managing the audio levels. So when the interpreter isn't speaking, the person who is speaking, the presenter, his volume is at 100%. Once the interpreter starts speaking, the person who's presenting's volume goes down and the interpreter's volume goes up. So if you've recorded it that way, there's nothing much you can do. You just need to sync it directly with the video. Otherwise, you get the original speaker, when he's speaking without interpretation, out of sync. However, if you've recorded just the interpretation, you can start playing with it. But like I said, if you don't know the language that is being interpreted, you will not be able to sync it because you won't have a clue whereabouts in that session you are.
Robert, wouldn't you also have the problem that, mine was a very unscientific test, but many years ago, for grids, I timed the safety speech on an airline that the flight attendants are required to give. And I determined that French took about 20% longer time to get what essentially is the same message across.
That is a challenge. We have that a lot in Polish as well, because you have twice as many syllables in Polish words than you do in English words. So yes, that is a challenge. But interpreters are trained. Trained interpreters know and understand how to deal with that, and they can literally catch up or use different phrases depending on what is being said and what is being spoken.
Yeah, I was just thinking of you really couldn't sync the interpreter's words to the original speaker's face because of the timing difference. That's all.
Oh yeah, you'll never do that, and then the lips will be out of sync, and there'll be a dissonance in people's minds when they're listening and watching.
Exactly. And the reason, by the way, I picked the safety speeches. Those are words prescribed by law. So you can't mess with the language.
Yeah. But FAA just to add kind of a side note on that, FAA standards worldwide is based on English, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah. Which helps with that. It's to say it's the law. A lot of people might respond and go, in every country, every language.
If the flight originates in the U.S., flight originates in the U.S., thou shalt use these words.
Yeah. Yeah, but you won't hear, I don't believe you'll hear an ATC controller anywhere in the world not speaking English. I could be wrong if it's domestic.
Except in the old Soviet bloc countries.
Yeah.
Actually, in any country, you can find it. There was a session a little while ago where a French airline pilot was getting very stressed. They're having trouble landing, and he switched to French in
sure.
air traffic control area.
Yeah. No, that's totally understandable for those kinds of situations.
There's a time code option in the recordings, but I've never used it because I'm assuming it's going to be superimposed on the videos.
I believe this is a time code. This is shown in the video itself.
It is. It's burned in. Yeah. I actually had a issue that turned into a support call because I turned on the time code and verified that, but I think it was my cloud recordings. I had cloud recordings of scheduled meetings. The time code was off by 2 hours, 2 time zones. And I'm like, wow. And so then I would do a PMI meeting and it would be correct. I'm like, that's weird. And then I do a local recording and that was correct. And I'm like, this is just bizarre. And man, after probably 30, 45 minutes of just kind of troubleshooting and with support, I bounced my profile setting in the Zoom US portal to, I don't remember, I think it was in Samoa, to a time zone there, saved it, and then bounced it back to Central US, saved it, and everything was fixed. I'm like, what? So I don't know what it was. I mean, it's meant to read your profile. I mean, that's your indicated time zone. But for some reason, that cloud recording was off by 2 hours until I bounced it to another and then back to the proper one, and it fixed it up. So they submitted that, and I was happy, and we were good to go. But it is burned in as a result. Let me.
I would have a question to Robert for the interpretation as well. Robert, where is the best place to check the interpreter's volume? Because this week, as you know, I had a meeting and webinar, and the volume in the meeting was quite good, but in the webinar it was nearly clipped. And I listened into the webinar, but I didn't get aware of this so much. So what would be a very good place to check the volume of the interpreter's channels?
That's a good question, because what you'd have to do is have on your computer have some sort of meter that will be checking the audio levels. And then you'd have to switch between the channels to ensure that they're all at the same level. And that becomes quite tricky. I do that every time we have a meeting before the interpreters go on. But if anything changes, then you lose that setting.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff can tell you a clever way of using ZoomISO to manage people's microphone levels and do it remotely, but I don't do that, not for the interpreters. I just don't like to touch the interpreters' equipment during the sessions because they actually stop interpreting, and when they see something moving, changing on their screen, it is so confusing. You got to keep in mind that these guys are listening, interpreting into a different language, and speaking it out at the same time. 3 things. I mean, I can hardly do one thing at the same time.
Yeah. Listening to what they're saying while you're speaking what they said and processing that, it's an unbelievable talent. That's for sure. I mean, I've met people, a couple of interpreters out of all the ones I've worked with that they walked off the job because they were fairly new, not nearly qualified enough, but they just got mentally exhausted. They just left, and because it was just way too much. Through whatever they practiced and so forth, it was fine, but it wasn't live, and it really worked them out. I felt bad, but they did everything they could. They're like, hey, can you get us a script? Hey, some programs are scripted and some programs are not scripted, and some speakers will stick to the script and some speakers won't as well. And so you always have to have that flexibility, I would imagine. David.
Yeah, but if I can just finish off on that, David,
Sure.
if you don't mind, I'll just finish that thought. With interpreters that are members of interpretation organizations, there's certain guidelines and rules that are set in place. And one of the things that is put in place is that when you get a job, you get the presentation minimum of 3 to 4 days beforehand, not so that you can translate the whole thing into the language you're going to be interpreting into, but so you can familiarize yourself with the vocabulary. No interpreter knows all of the vocabulary of each and every vertical market during an event. It's just impossible to do. So that's one thing. And just going back to Andre, the way I do it is because I'm doing the local recordings on laptops in the studio, I have a meter on each and every laptop that's just showing me the volume levels so that I can look at and glance at them and make sure they're okay without having to listen to them all the time.
Okay, and what kind of meter do you use and how do you integrate it, if I may ask?
I'll send you a link.
That's great.
I started off, to be very honest with you, I started off by running OBS on each and every laptop and just having the meter there capturing the mics. But I'll show you something that's more specialized to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
and even the OBS solution, whether it's OBS, vMix, whatever, I mean, OBS is a lot cheaper than vMix for all that. But that still precedes Zoom, right? Right, because it's going to feed it into Zoom, which then could or could not have auto volume control on, and if it's off and the slider's down versus on, you have to know where you're getting that sound, and is there anything between that meter and the audience? Are you really measuring what the audience is going to hear, or potentially what the audience will hear? Right, if nothing else gets in the way, it's tough. There's a lot of thresholds.
The safest way, of course, is to have all of the interpreters in booths on site, and then you're doing it in a different manner. But when you're online, those challenges that Jeff, you're talking about are there. You need to.
Yeah.
David had his hand up for quite a while. I know he had something on his mind.
Well, so now I have two things on my mind. That's what you get for making me wait. But based on what you just said, I'm very interested. What you just said, Robert, that having everyone on site means essentially that you get to control what mic they're using, their setup and their settings. Whereas if they're off site, we have no control, as you said, Jeff, whether they have echo cancellation on low, high, if they have auto adjust volume. I wonder if Zoom will ever build in a way natively for producers to be able to have those controls over participants or not participants, panelists or interpreters. But so that was my second thought. My first thought was, Robert, just a question. Given how difficult it is to be able to listen, translate, and speak, what's the training? Like, how do you train for that kind of work?
Well, the two things. One is not everyone's brain is built in the manner that will allow you to do that. So they are, and the Nuremberg court cases brought out the best and the best standards in interpretation, because that's where interpretation was used in a global manner for the first time in history. And what they noticed, there's certain people who have a mapping in the brain that will allow them to do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, for training purposes, my wife is an interpreter, and what she will do is she'll switch on the TV in the language she wants to just go through, or the news to get all familiar with names and what's on topic, etc. And she will repeat what the speaker is saying loud. Just try doing that. After 5 minutes, you're totally exhausted. It's just such an unnatural thing to do. Like, just if I was to echo you for an hour, David, you would go mad. I would go mad. It's really challenging. So these are special people that have that one in that map, those connections in their brain to be able to do this. And secondly, They practice. It's just like with all good skills. You practice until you get it right.
Crazy.
Robert,
do you imagine?
I know.
Sorry.
Robert, I
Go
know
ahead,
that
Peter,
the military in the U.S. at their language school in Monterey screens people for that particular capability. Because my daughter got screened for that. She failed, by the way. She can't keep it straight in her head. But they went through the class and they said, and it was Chinese, it was Mandarin they were screening for.
Jeff, do you imagine Zoom giving producers or interpreting directors the capacity to actually control other people's volume settings, mic setting, things like that, so that we can better, balance or maybe even have, build in a WLM type situation so that you can gauge all of your interpreters' levels?
Anything is possible, and I think the odds went up with bringing Andy Carluccio on, to have him inside, because he came to Zoom already showing the production world how to remotely control lighting and audio. I mean, I remember for sure it had to have been a year ago, probably over a year ago, watching a board faders move at his command thousands of miles away. It was just crazy. And so certainly the knowledge is there, and parts of that I don't think we have all that control locally, but the potential's there, right? I mean, the only reason, let's say, because we could set up ZoomOSC on my end and ZoomOSC on your end, and if it's on both sides, we could do that remote control. But then you're still under the the list of things that OSC has access to through the Zoom SDK. But now with him inside, could they expose volume control or auto volume control checkbox via remote OSC or whatever the implementation may be. But I think Zoom's proven that anything's possible. Their job is to have to prioritize it to their business and the industries and so forth. So it be an interesting play to have a pop-up window that I'm looking at. Tony's still sitting in this pop-up window as the American Sign Language designee, to have kind of a border control of maybe volume and so forth, so that the hosts in fact can manage that. It'd be very
Jeff,
powerful.
we still do events where each participant comes into a large audio board. It's not unusual for an audio professional, especially like a monitor mixer, to stay on top of levels from all of them. So it's done now with a professional manning the audio board, trying to get both sides to communicate with each other to do this automatically is definitely at the Andy Carluccio level.
Yeah.
By the way, I just noticed, Ray, that when you said that you still see Tony, I had closed the interpretation. I see Tony in the interpretation window, but he's not in the gallery view. So Tony, is your camera turned off?
No, he's on.
But so I don't understand. Does he disappear from gallery view?
If he's the designated language interpreter, I think Zoom has made the choice that says we don't want to show him twice. That'll confuse the audience.
Oh, okay.
And so
no, this is Jeff. Sorry to interrupt you. This is why I said it's so important who the first person is in that list, because when we put the second person in, and that second person switches his camera on, he's going to come in the gallery.
Gotcha.
Ah.
So if I assign,
who's going to come in the gallery?
The second sign interpreter.
This is going to cause us to continue through this exercise. So I can assign a second one right now, and my verbal instruction to them would be, don't turn your camera on until you see the signal from the active interpreter that you guys are going to make a switch. When you guys make the switch, they're going to shut their camera off. You're going to turn your camera on. And because I've already designated them by definition, Zoom will manage that switch. Is that what you're saying is going to happen?
Well, it's slightly different because that first person really controls it. So if if Tony's camera is on, the second person won't come into this slot. Sure. If Tony switches his camera off, that second person will come into the slot if his camera is on.
Automatically.
Automatically, yes.
So if we'll have to test this down, because it's like, because of the length of the program, do we have to hire more than 2 that bounce back and forth? Do we have to hire 3 or 4 because of the length of the program and so forth? If they're, let's say, you see what you have to say on this one, Robert. If they're on for 20 minutes, how much time off do they expect? Is 20 on, 20 off fine? I mean, I'm not saying exact times. I'm just saying, if they're on for 10, is 10 on, 10 off, 15 on, 15 off? What's the break expectation to be able to recover as an interpreter to be able to jump back on effectively?
Okay, to jump back on effectively means that you'll be interpreting properly, in the correct manner. So with voice simultaneous interpretation online, it's between 15 and 20 minutes. On site, it's between 20 and 30 minutes. The cognitive load on an online event is far heavier than a live event. Okay, with sign interpreters, I really don't want to give a blanket figure for that, but what I see is half an hour switches between the 2.
I've got a good friend, Jake, who teaches at a sign language school, and he interprets on the side and so forth. I just about reached out to him, but it was a holiday, so I didn't want to bug him. But him and his wife and our family used to ballroom dance together, and he's just amazing. But I see if I can get him on and maybe add a little bit more depth and so forth. I know he's willing, but we'll make that happen.
Jeff, we've got Frank and Lois lined up with some comments or questions.
Sure. Yep. Go ahead, Frank.
Hi. So I'm just going to speak about what I know locally in my region. The sign language interpreters are unionized, the ones we use, and they have a clause or a requirement that there's always at least 2, and they spell each other off after 15-minute increments. That allows one to rest while one takes over. And that's why this option in Zoom of the second person is very important. And as has been pointed out, the first sign language interpreter who's assigned that duty, when their camera's on, the second camera's off, they control it for both people.
The whole time. So both directions bouncing, the first one is in control?
Yeah, the primary sign language, the person who starts, controls it for both of the sign language interpreters.
So
when they're remote, how do they communicate with each other to say, I'm signing off, or do you just wait for your screen to come?
I've seen nothing in Zoom that allows that, but I imagine they would have a conversation before the session starts, and they always work in pairs, so they probably know each other really well. And
or chat.
As soon as the primary person mutes their camera, the second camera becomes active, and when the primary person retakes control and activates their camera, it shuts the second camera off. So I guess they would just.
And what if there's more than 2?
Haven't tried it.
Do you know what happened?
That's what we're going to do in the Zoom test kitchen today. We're going to help answer that, right? I mean, that's what we do.
Lois also has her hand up.
Just, Lois, if I can just finish off on that handover, the switching from one interpreter to the other is called a handover. And with simultaneous interpretation, you have to have a back channel to be able to do that, where you have a visual back channel. An interpreter, when he's interpreting, doesn't have time to read chat or to type in on the chat. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
So there's a back channel. We use Slack because Slack, for some reason, allows you to share the camera. So we can get one camera feeding into two different programs. So that's really good. But when they're informal events, a lot of interpreters use WhatsApp for that, for informal. But if you're doing a corporate event, then you can't allow the interpretation to go outside of the security of the meeting itself, so you can't use. While Slack is usually amongst a lot of corporate organizations accepted as exactly, so that's not an issue.
Good information. Yeah, really good info. And I mean, I've seen it more in person than online, but you know, they agree on some kind of visual cue that is really so casual to the audience that they hardly know. The recipients of their signing recognize these cues because they've watched this stuff, and it's not some fixed cue. It's just whatever they decide on, and so it can be very, I think, non-interruptive. Just some kind of visual cue that all the second person knows is where that all of a sudden their camera's on would be super abrupt with no warning. This visual cue is just it's like, it's coming soon. I need it to come soon. And so it just puts them on a ready state would be my guess. And so it won't be quite such an abrupt change when it's the camera that's making the hard cue, if you will. Lois? Robert?
I say there's definitely a sign that comes through. And it depends. Interpreters usually work with each other because they get to know each other. They get to, there's a very high level of trust between interpreters that work with each other. So you'll see a sign interpreter just turn slightly to the left or to the right, saying that, okay, I'm ready to hand over, because he can't do a sign with his hands. His hands are doing something completely different. Yeah. And you can't sort of twiggle your nose because no one will notice it. So that's often just one of the ways they do it. Yeah,
interesting. Lois, what you got?
So I was wondering what Tony was seeing, and then I noticed in the chat that his microphone is turned off, so asking him to explain that isn't going to do any good. When this portion is over, is there going to be a time for other questions?
Yeah, topically. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, I mean, I stated this one and some ZoomOSC ISO, but we can definitely, I mean, it's not such a hard, narrow road that we can't vary from that on completion. So
could you let Tony talk? Because I would love to see what he is seeing, whether he has control over pinning someone, or is he on speaker mode, or how would it work?
So Tony, maybe give me a head nod, yes or no, on this. Are you hard muted and can't unmute right now? Because it's not my restriction. Interesting. All right. So because that's good identification. Because I've defined you as a sign language interpreter, it has hard muted you. I'm assuming that's to avoid any accidents as far as audio goes, because that's not me. My security options say allow participants to unmute themselves, and that is enabled. Now, I wonder...
And as a co-host, I can stop his video, but I cannot allow him to speak. There's no mute or unmute option for me.
So if in the participants list, if I highlight over Tony, I can click a button that pops up and it says allow to talk. And so he's indicated here. Let me share my screen.
No, he's in twice. Remember, he's got a.
Yeah, Tony, you may want to disable that second instance.
He can't.
That's okay. I mean, I know which one his interpreter on mine says Tony Mobley interpreter because he's assigned, and then the other one's right below him, and it's not. And so, and you can see this now, right? I'm sharing. See Tony Mobley interpreter. If I take the mouse off, you can see the small icon. Here, let me zoom that.
But Jeff, just to clarify,
Right here.
that second Tony Mobley, Tony, you came in on a second device. That's not, yeah,
Correct.
That's not just a placeholder, right?
Yeah, it
Okay.
didn't duplicate them because of the assignment of translator. That's a good point. Yeah, he's got two devices in. So when my mouse is not moused over, you can see the ASL icon and also the interpreter designation, and then his second device is below that. But so you're saying, David, when a co-host mouse is over, so does you see two Tonys? Do you see one of them as an interpreter, Tony? You're a co-host. So that's why I'm asking you. Can't hear you.
He's seen one.
I'm sorry. I do see both. I see Tony Mobley interpreter and Tony Mobley, but I do not have the option to allow to speak.
Okay. So as a co-host, you can see that he is in
Tony
fact
just
an
took away
interpreter.
his second.
Yeah. And but when you're moused over, only the host gets the option to allow to talk, and then that becomes a pop-up menu option. Just make sure there's nothing else. And so, Tony, I'm gonna allow you to talk. There you go. Oh, now I have to click on me. That's a double hit on my part.
Okay, so
Whoops.
this is the first time that that is.
We can hear you, and now you're both in the gallery and in the sign language window.
Yeah, that did put him in the gallery.
So
Yeah,
right
it's
now I'm
changed his
showing
role temporarily,
three
I guess.
windows. So I have three windows. One is the sign language, American Sign Language. That is one window that is showing, and then the traditional grid view of all of the panelists, and then I have. I guess because I'm using two screens, one is the
dual monitor
teleprompter.
mode. Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to
Can you pin anyone, Tony, in that gallery view?
Let's see. I'm going to see if I can pin David. Yes, I was able to pin David.
Is that because you're a co-host though, and not like I don't think an interpreter would be able to do that.
I'm a nobody and I can pin.
He's not a co-host.
Can't hear you.
His
Jeff.
only role is interpreter.
Yeah.
And maybe Jeff, maybe stop sharing to see if his screen will change.
Roland says
Well, no,
everybody
he was
pin.
he was just pinning. He wasn't spotlighting. Pinning is just for himself, and everybody can do that.
And he might be able to multi-pin too. We don't know.
His role. What was interesting. I'm hearing myself back through somebody. Your speakers are coming back in the mic. Somebody's.
It might be me. Let me mute myself.
But if you leave, we'll never get you back, Tony.
No, he didn't disappear, did he? He's not disappeared from the gallery view, even though he's now muted.
So I'm gonna select disable talk. I have to, as the host, not only he can mute himself, I could have muted him, but I actually have to. It's a two-step deal. I have to allow to talk and unmute or mute. I'm wondering if I do a disable. Let me try this again. I'm going to allow to talk. Now I'm going to click on mute. Now, Tony, confirm that you're unmuted.
I am unmuted, and I am able to do multiple pins.
So you can do multiple pins?
Yes.
That's not a natural behavior. So that to me, so when on my participants list, what else is happening is Tony begins with the letter T. So when he is a when he is a disabled to talk muted signer, he's at the bottom of the list, my list, as a T for Tony. When I enable him to talk, he goes up to the top portion of my participants list. And now that he said I can multi-pen, that's an assignment. You have to be assigned that or be a co-host or host. So it's not indicating to me that he's a co-host, but it's treating him like one right now. So
isn't that just part of the role of interpreter, that you can multi-pin? I mean, isn't that just built into the interpreter role?
I don't know that we have that answer yet.
Jeff, can we just clarify something?
Yep.
Tony, when you say multi-pin, do you mean you're pinning one person to your primary Zoom monitor and another person to your secondary Zoom monitor? Because that's not really multi-pinning.
You are correct, David.
Yeah, because everyone can. I mean, if you have double monitors, the dual monitor mode,
anyone you can two people to monitor one or two people to monitor two. Try to do two the same.
That's correct. So I was mistaken. I can pin one person to one monitor and another person to another monitor.
But when you try to pin a second person to a monitor that already has one pinned, does it let you do that or not?
Let me try.
Replace pin is what it says for me.
Yeah.
Yep. The only option is to replace the pin.
Okay. All right. So you're not a full co-host. Can you click on anybody and spotlight them just to get a kind of a double confirmation that you're not being treated like a co-host?
No spotlighting ability.
Okay, cool. So for some reason, when I allow you to talk, no, this is why. Because your mic is unmuted. Unmuted mics also float up in the participants list. So that's so he's not gaining any more permissions. But he is moving in my participants list because his mic is unmuted. Okay, that makes sense now.
That's one of the reasons when we have a lot of interpreters on an event, we use a special symbol just to group them and to bring them to the top. So it'll be our famous space or a dot or something. Correct. So we can group them and see them at the top of the list all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes
Jeff,
sense.
did you just disallow him to speak?
Yeah, I disabled his ability to speak.
So now he's back out of the gallery and into ASL. Frank has been wanting to jump in. Frank, you got to be more aggressive, buddy.
Like Canadian, I'm going to wait my turn.
Yeah, there you go.
Two questions. I'm curious. I don't know the answer. Tony's picture as the interpreter looks really good to me. I'm wondering if Zoom's giving a little extra bandwidth because it's so important to be able to see the hands when someone's signing. I'm wondering if they're allocating a bit extra bandwidth. And my second question is, when I hover over the sign language window, there's a blue circle with 3 dots. And when I click on it, it says chat. And I've clicked on chat, but nothing happens. So I'm wondering if anyone knows what that's for.
When you click on chat, if you look in your meeting chat, it populates Tony's name, so you can direct message Tony.
I didn't connect that part. Interesting. So you could chat up the interpreter. Wonder why you would want to. I wouldn't want to distract the interpreter, but okay, interesting. Thank you.
You can chat with anyone who use pictures. You can see who gives you 3 dots.
Yeah, I didn't expect the interpreter to have that because they're a special role, and it seems like it would be distracting to chat the interpreter while they're working. Mm-hmm. So interesting.
Yeah. Well, and that behavior, like that chat option, that's available from anybody in your participants list. But what threw me when you said that is it's this floating window, but yet the same option is there. Yeah, I see that. Cool.
I do just want to say, I think Frank is
Tony,
absolutely...
Let me unmute you again. I see you trying to talk here.
I think Frank is absolutely onto something about the resolution, because Tony's picture is just, you're a beautiful man, Tony, but your picture here is stunning. the quality.
I lost Tony.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
No, hang on. Allow to talk. There we go. And unmute. Okay, now you're on, Tony.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that I am using the Shoot app with a 10S Max, and that is what you're seeing. And I'm only using one of my 3 GVM lights and 2 small newer lights. And
Right, but I guess, Tony, I think what Frank is pointing out is that right now I've got you on my pinned on one or not pinned. You're on one monitor, and then I've got your ASL on the other monitor, and the ASL one at the same size is much sharper than your other one.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I have my statistics, Zoom stats up, and Tony's window was small. Looks good, small. I mean, most compressed video does. And I'm receiving him at I'm receiving whoever at the moment. Tony, go ahead and talk to me.
So I am using the Shoot app, Michael Forrest Shoot app.
So it was at 180 resolution, and it continued at 180 when he was talking, because we know it is triggered by active speakers. So now I'm stretching his window really large, actually, almost my full 2K monitor. Now talk to me, Tony.
Now is the summer of our discontent, made glorious summers by the Son of York in the deep bosom of the ocean buried.
It changed, my resolution changed of Tony, but it only went from like 180 to 360. And so I would have expected more. The smaller windows look great. But
Jeff, if you, there's no way to get stats. So I also opened statistics, but if we were to not disable him to talk, there's no stats that we would get on his resolution in the ASL window.
I wouldn't suspect, only with my knowledge that says I know that active speaker audio is the trigger, and so I would suspect that trigger remains the same, and we wouldn't see a change. That's why I unmuted him for that test. But that's it's a little bit assumptive.
John Drinkwater says swap to see if we can get a different person in the interpreter window to see if that changes, since Tony's using an app.
Yeah, that's true too. So let me put us back where we were as far as Tony being muted and disabled talking. So now he should be out of the gallery in his floating window. We've confirmed that I'm going to share a screen real quick, and we've confirmed that the designated ASL interpreter pops up in the floating window, which is in fact resizable. This is for the YouTube and the archives, everybody, and it's also closable. And so now it's gone. It's not that he's not the signer any longer. It's just I don't want to see him, and so it turned it off. I can go back to my interpretation toolbar button and click on American Sign Language and bring him back. And so I can move them, reposition them. And so, if somebody, I mean, every attendee's in control of whether they want a small picture-in-picture, a large picture-in-picture, just Tony, and they can shut off everything else. This is for the non-co-hosts, standard attendees. Can you all incoming video? And what happens to Tony? So have Tony up, but then turn off all incoming video. You have that option under the view button, top right corner. Stop
I
incoming
get him
video.
in his ASL just as a placeholder. His video's gone.
So it
You're
turned
the
off
only one as host,
signer as
Jeff.
well.
You're the only one who can kill all video.
So that's not an attend. I thought attendees had the ability to clear up their screen too. But is that not true? That's just my doings as the host.
I did that.
So, Lois, you were able to turn off everyone's video?
Yeah. And
well, I mean, she's not turning up, but she's,
so when I start incoming video, now I can see everybody moving again. And when I turn it off, it says stop incoming video. That's
so on the top right corner of the Zoom area, the view button.
Yeah, I don't have that.
You don't have a view button? How do you switch between gallery and speaker?
No, I have a view button. I have speaker, gallery, hide self view, show non-video participants, or full screen. That's all I've got. And I'm a co-host.
That's the same on my side.
Yeah, I can vouch for that too, guys.
Louis, are you co-host?
So co-hosts can't do it and I can? That's weird.
Lois, are you on a Mac?
Of course.
I'm on a Mac as well.
I am too.
I'm looking under the client settings to see if this is a setting. And if somebody wants to look in the portal settings, it really may be a setting that a few of us have on and some of us don't. That's what I'm aiming towards.
Do you want to stop sharing?
It's an option that you do have to activate in the settings. It says
the local software or back end.
No, in your local Zoom client, it says function for stopping incoming video under the video tab.
Yeah, in the video settings, enable stop incoming video feature. I have it checked.
Yes, I
Mine is checked.
tried it now, it works.
How about you, David?
I don't have that option. And
so under video settings, under hide non-video, hide self view, enable stop incoming.
No, I've got hide non-video. No,
David, is your client little over?
I'm on the latest client. Hide non-video and hide self view, and then see myself as the active speaker.
All right, so that's when we go further back.
It has to be enabled in the portal.
I'm going to the portal now.
Enable it in the client. If it's not enabled in the portal, it won't appear in the client.
Yeah, so they're under in meeting advanced in the portal. There's an enable stop incoming video feature that needs to be enabled first, and then you'll see it in the client.
Yeah.
So the overlord can turn you off? Is that what you're saying?
No, so that you can actually turn off all the video except those that the host is spotlighting. And it's really
save bandwidth. If you have a lot of clients taking only audio or whatever, you can save a lot of bandwidth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jeff, I saw that.
Reverse focus
to my client.
It added it to your client on the fly in meeting?
Yep.
Well, and so you enabled it from the portal?
I enabled it from my client, and I now
from
have
the
that
client.
view. I now
From
have
the
that
client,
view. Stop incoming. Start incoming.
And are you on a Mac? Are you on a Mac?
But it has to be
on a PC.
But it has. It would have had to be enabled.
It would have.
Portal
The back end
first.
portal had to have been enabled already, which is that's the point as well. So I don't think
that's the default, I assume, since I don't have an overlord.
No, it is not on by default.
That allowing the individual to turn it on or off is not on by default?
Yeah,
so it is.
I don't know.
No, so it's not on by default. I just went into the web portal. I turned it on. I enabled it. I do not have the option, as I think it was Jonas said, to enable it during this meeting. So once I jump out of this meeting and then I join a new one, I'll have.
Yeah, there's not much from the portal that'll. I mean, like if you change your name, that'll carry into a meeting, but there's not much else that's live without having to leave and come back. That'll make the change. But I remember, it's a feature that, was released, and some of those features they don't, sometimes they have that little version V, next to the feature. It's 5.8 or newer, but it doesn't indicate, the default setting either. So
okay, Jeff, I just wanted to report back. You wanted someone to do the stop incoming video?
Yeah. So
Okay, I did that. And as soon as I did that, I also lost the sign language. Tony is now, I'm seeing his profile picture.
Yeah. Okay. Knowledge is in the details, baby. So,
that's actually, I think that's really interesting because forgive me for trying to wear the shoes of someone who needs sign language, but it seems to me that I might want to turn off everyone else's videos to minimize distractions, but keep the signer's video on. That's really, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah. What is, so I say how 2 years ago in Zoom webinar, did I support a program with a signer or 2 signers at that. And it was, I always had 2 spotlights, right? And had the main speaker and always a second spotlight of the signer. And that never went away. The whole program, I would have to switch the signer when they switched roles, or I'd add more spotlights if the panel grew, but the signer was always present. This doesn't require me to have to spotlight, but it might because of what we're kind of identifying right now. But it can be anywhere. 1, it can be out of the way. 2, it can be there, and it can be anywhere the attendee wants it to be on their screens, which is super convenient. And I think that was probably the primary drive. And so no, it's good just to dig deep here and see the behavior. I mean, for one to shut off all, because I can set a custom gallery view and say follow host view and to know what the real result is if you have translators present is super important.
Okay, Jeff, another thing I did notice too was that if you wanted to, you could actually minimize the actual Zoom client.
Yes.
And since Tony is a pop-up, you could actually make him full screen.
Yes, you can get rid of everybody else's and just see him.
Sure. Yeah.
And
that makes a lot of sense.
Interestingly, it even overlaps the settings window. Usually this Zoom settings window overlaps everything, but the sign language overlaps this as well.
Yeah, and I also noticed too when Jeff was sharing that I could actually have the sign language window over top of the share too.
Yeah, the sign language is always on top. I've been testing that with kind of everything. Let me pull up the video settings. The only thing that covered it up was when I went to settings in the client software. That was the only time something's set on top of it. But I will say that I'm a title bar double clicker for full screen, and the sign language on a PC does not do that. You have to click on the maximize icon in the top right. But
it works on the Mac.
It double clicking the top does. Mac always gets the good stuff. So I'm over here. My Mac is running the ISO right now.
Laura Thompson has her hand up.
Yeah, I saw that too. Thank you. Laura, what have you got for us?
The only thing I did want to point out is we're talking about windows and how do we arrange things. A lot of people who are American Sign Language fluent also prefer to have the active speaker because ASL is not a direct word for word of English. There's a lot of, and there's some nuances inside of choosing what sign, and quite often it's sentence structure and things like that. So a lot of people prefer to have the active speaker and the sign language interpreter only because they're lip reading as they're watching the sign language interpreter.
Well, and some sign language interpreters I notice are very expressive. We have a missionary in our church right now in the area that is a signer as well. He just did it a couple weeks ago, and he's super expressive. But some aren't as expressive, And so, when the speaker, it makes great sense of Laura's addition here is, when the speaker has humor or a chuckle or a bit, like you gain a lot of personality being able to see the original speaker, let alone read lips and so forth as well. It makes a ton of sense. So I think that's where it becomes, really powerful to have this floating window that says arrange it the way you'd like. And you can even pin the main speaker, even if it's not being spot lit or whatnot, just you can pin the main speaker and move that ASL window where to what size you'd like, and away you go. I really like what's going on. Let me, before we do anything else, let me add a second interpreter, which has taken a long time to get to this point. Didn't realize the popularity of the conversation, but we'll love it when we get here. So I'm sharing my screen so you can see. Let me kind of clean things up. I'll shrink it down so it's just a little easier to see Tony's floating window there. I'll kill the extra side. All right, so we got the Tony window, which is the ASL signer. In this case, the gallery, or we could go active speaker. David, go ahead and speak if you would.
This is David Paskin coming in from sunny Miami, Florida.
So side by side with the signer and active speaker or spotlit speaker at that, right?
And by the way, it's going to be interesting to watch the YouTube playback to see if the signer window is anywhere on the live stream playback.
So I've got it up live. I can see on YouTube exactly what I'm showing you on screen right now.
No, but that's because you're screen sharing. I mean, when you're not screen sharing and you've got someone
this small window right here that you're seeing, that is the live YouTube feed right there. So
but that's because you're screen sharing. But that's because you're screen sharing. What I'm saying is when you're not screen sharing, I wonder if Tony as the interpreter still right. I wonder if he still is.
So I'm going to pop it up without a screen share.
Can we get Tony to turn his camera off? I'd like to see the mechanism where it switches to the second interpreter and replaces it.
Well, we don't have a second interpreter
you haven't done that
defined yet.
Sorry. I'm ahead of you.
No,
but now I just got a pop-up that says waiting for interpreters to join or turn on video. So in the interpreter window, his video was replaced by that little sign.
I'm waiting for the live. Okay, there we go. So I'm watching the YouTube live feed right now, and now I killed the share. It finally got to that spot, and now it's full screen active speaker, and no ASL. And that makes perfect sense because the way it's presented in the Zoom client is a user option opt-in, right? I want it, I don't want it, and so forth. So it makes perfect sense that it's not
It would
there.
be nice, though, if there was a way to actually capture it and send it out as a second feed.
Yeah.
Apple does that for their keynotes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just a pip, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I burn it in, but that's, for a, it'd be interesting to see how a YouTube, streaming platform would be able to
Zoom
handle
learned
that.
from burning in the captions and how many people didn't like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's why it's not automatically burnt into the stream.
Well, but what would you burn, right? So when you're streaming and you're recording, for the most part, the rule is the source, to a degree, the source comes from the host's computer, not a co-host or anybody else. And but because I'm the host, what are they getting? And then where's my window?
If it would automatically PIP it, your window plus the picture-in-picture of the sign language interpreter.
Yeah, well, it makes me think, can I see Tony? Yes, I can see Tony in the participants window. You know, like if you have a a near pip is when you're sharing screen and then you have the spotlight or 2 or 3 spotlights on the side of that share. But the fact is I can't, as the host, I can't spotlight Tony because he's designated an interpreter. The option to spotlight isn't there. Even the option to pin him is not.
That would be
there
interesting to
naturally
see
as
how
well.
we would get that out if corporate did want a sign language interpreter going out to a stream. That would be interesting to see how you do that.
Well, and I might, this voice is coming in my head that says, maybe we want to wait till we get production studio. Maybe you can assign this not only a custom layout, but the custom layout does have name designations. From what I understand, you'll be able to say, hey, this individual goes to this window and this one and that one and so forth, these custom production layouts. And if you can also assign an ASL interpreter into one of those, then that problem could be solved as well. So
John asked a really interesting question also. John, do you want? Were you going to ask what you put in the chat?
Yes, I was, David. ZoomISO.
I can't hear him.
Separate stream.
Yeah, we need a little more microphone.
You're very low, John.
Is it a separate stream in ZoomISO? Can you see it or?
Let me look over here at my control panel.
Right, because if we could grab it with ISO, then we could build a scene. It's a really good question. Sometime before 5, we really do need to add a second interpreter to see if we can.
Yeah, I know. Tony's totally wiped out, man. I just tried to minimize. Interesting. Okay, so the Zoom that I have running on my Mac is the ZoomOSC ISO client. And I tried to minimize it to get it out of the way so I could get the control panel. And it says, you cannot minimize Zoom when you are recording this meeting. I had not ever seen that before. Okay, so Tony Mobley outputs participant Tony NDI 1080 out. And if I click on preview, he's there. Yeah. So here, I'm in the meeting. Let me share.
But is he there, Jeff, as a participant, or is he there as a separate, is he identified as an interpreter?
No, it's just a video feed with ZoomISO. So let me,
Yeah, I believe that ISO treats everyone as a participant, whether he's a panelist or not.
It's not showing these items. Let me see. I think on this account, I'm not showing the windows. Hang on. I'm also capturing the screen on my vMix machine. Let me do it that way instead. That's the Mac. Here we go. All right. So that's the Mac screen. I'm going to pull that out of the way. And this is the ZoomISO board. So what I did is ZoomISO feed 1 is it's a participant out of everybody who's in the meeting. I scrolled down and selected Tony Mobley as an NDI output at 1080. Status right now, he's at 180, so it's a lighter feed. I think they probably, for efficiency's sake, put video priority on others in the meeting versus the ASL signer. And I'm sure there could be arguments around that. And then I clicked on the preview, and you can see that Tony is there as a preview. So I'm getting the feed. So if I go over here to my feed in the Zoom meeting, because I'm picking up that feed, you can see Tony there. Tony, are you frozen or are you just sitting still? You got to be frozen.
No, I blink.
No, yeah. He's frozen. Tony, wake up, Tony. Allowed to talk. Unmuted. Tony.
You were warned not to leave them on too long, and this is what happens.
You know what's interesting is that
killed him.
There's no there's I've got a screen, almost a screenshot of him in the ASL window, but no video. But no video is coming into the gallery view.
My sign language
He's not in the
window is
gallery
only
view.
gray.
No, he is in the gallery view.
Yeah, that's a good. I clicked on
a
allow to talk so we could see if we could hear from him. So he said
Yeah, I'm frozen. If you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
I am frozen.
Okay. So I'm going to put you back into. I'm going to put you back into signer mode. Okay. So
since
now
he's frozen, now might be a good time to assign someone else to.
Yeah. We've worn that guy down. Let's assign a second. Okay. All right. Here we go. And let me kill this share. Too many screens. Actually, that wasn't sharing. Okay. All right. So the second, if I share this screen, I'm going to pop up. Oh, how do you guys like this new preview? Is it useful to anybody?
Never saw this before.
So
What program is that?
That's Zoom.
No, this is in Zoom. The new preview.
Yeah.
You can see what you're sharing. Ever since I've started using production software like Ecamm or OBS, I never screen share anymore. So.
Yeah, and so you can dock it to the bottom. There's a little bit of status on recording and this and that, but it shows you what you're sharing. You can't resize it. You can collapse it, but it doesn't get any bigger. And so it's just one of those things like.
Yeah, but this eliminates the question, can you see what I show you? This is quite good.
I mean, it's an indication. It's a good indication that you're sharing, but I don't know. I'd love to know the inspiration. Like, were there just too many people sharing and they didn't know it? Therefore, people saw, something they shouldn't have. Whatever. I don't know what the inspiration behind it was, but it's not big enough to be terribly useful visually in the sense of what am I really sharing, especially if it's like a portion of the screen or something like that. But needless to say. All right. So the second interpreter, I'm going to go to interpretation, manage interpretation, sign language here. It's just Tony right now. We're going to add an interpreter, make it a sign language interpreter. Who wants to be it? Who wants to be number 2 and relieve Tony?
Me.
Who is that? Laura or
Lois?
Lois. Okay. Lois.
You know I volunteer for everything you test.
Oh, yeah. All right. So Lois is there, and I'm going to update. And so now Lois is there as well.
Hey, Jeff, I just want to, so that big red button said end. Did I see that correctly?
Yeah. I could, that's me, the host, turning off interpretation across the board.
See, I would have seen that as an add button if I didn't look carefully.
My brain, I just didn't say it out loud. You said it out loud. My brain, right before I said, I'll click on update, definitely went to the bottom right and caught it on the bottom left. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So I can see 2 assignments in the participants list. There's 2 ASL icons now. See if I can pull this window down a little bit. And then if I go to the gallery view, Lois, does Lois, let's see. Let me resize a window slightly. Lois's camera is on by the icon indication. It's on, but we don't see her in the gallery. We still see Tony live in the ASL window. And so I want to poke around a little bit here just to make sure that I don't have any new controls to make the change between them. Tony's camera is on as well, so they're both designated. Tony's choices allow. Now, I mean, it's not explicit. Stop video has always been there, so that's not new because Tony's an interpreter. But I'm assuming that if I stop his video, Lois will pop up into the ASL because she's defined as the other, or if Tony shuts off his camera. So let's do those two things. I'm going to stop the video first, because what if something happened to Tony? He got up, he walked away, he fainted, who knows? Can we get to the second interpreter? and so with that, I'm going to stop his video. Boom. Automatically there's Lois. Nice. I like it. And then Tony, now I can't start Tony's video, but I can ask him to start it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to request him to turn his video on.
And could he start his video without you asking him?
Yeah, no, that's a great next test as well. So I asked him to turn it on. It automatically flipped back to him, which Robert described. The reason that happened was because he was the primary, right? Okay.
And presumably that means, Jeff, that he could not come back into the meeting with video on and not be an interpreter, because as soon as he turns his video on, he's going to subsume the interpreter role. Yeah, so you'd have to remove him as a,
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'd have to undefine him, which, is absolutely, like, if I know he's done, like we have a 4-hour program and I know he contracted the first 2 hours of it, I could go into manage interpreters and I can just remove him from that list now that we know he's gone and so forth. But I think he'd probably fall off this list, I would presume, the moment he left the meeting formally as well. But that might be yet another test. So Tony, this time, why don't you go ahead and turn your camera off yourself, knowing that you and your partner have agreed at switch time.
Yeah, okay. There she is.
Okay.
And please let's check if he can switch his camera on if you turn it off, Jeff.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have him turn it back on now. And, Tony, you turn yours on, and he came back. Now, Tony, turn yours off. So let's get
Andre
back.
No, Andre wants to know. Andre wants.
No, I know. I know, but I want Tony to turn it off again to get back to Lois, but this time I want Lois to turn her camera off and see if it'll force Tony back on, and then we'll do the Andre request as well.
Cool.
Okay, so there. Now, Lois, you're finished. You're off. And it won't turn his camera on, but it does go back to him. And so it's more, which, you think about the rhythm between two translators. It's really, I mean, you may say, hey, David, you ready? Whatever our sign is, but only when you're ready is when it's time to switch. I may be exhausted, but that doesn't mean you're ready to take over. And so the moment you're ready is when you turn on your camera, is when it will make the switch automatically between the two. Now, Tony, go ahead and turn your camera back on.
Yeah, but Jeff, Tony is really the deciding person here because he's in the first slot.
Yeah, he has to turn his camera off, and when Lois is done, yeah, that's true. When he's the primary, Lois can sit there right now, and she is, with her camera on, and it makes no difference as far as the switching mechanism. But Tony doesn't have that opportunity to do that. When he's offline, he has to keep his camera off, because the moment he turns it on, he's back live, because he's the first interpreter assigned. And so that's a super strong point. So to Andre's point, I'm going to stop Tony's video. So now it's off and we're to Lois, but I'm not going to turn it back on. Andre wanted to see, can Tony turn it on, since I was the one who turned it off. So Tony, go ahead and try to turn your camera back on. So he can't. Okay. I'll ask to start. Now he can respond to that. There he is. So I can force him down. So I guess to that previous point, saying if he knows the rules, he knows he has to stay video muted because the second signer's doing it. If he accidentally forgot about that and turned his camera on, if I was on top of things, I could turn his camera off. It would go back to Lois and turn it back on. Good, bad, it's a behavior. I mean, I'm telling you, Zoom Test Kitchen is, to me, all about understanding behaviors. Whether you like them or not, agree with them or not, if you're aware of them, we can prepare and be prepared, and instead of embarrassed, right? And because if I turn it off and he can't turn it back on, how do they queue themselves back up? Now I have to be part of the queuing mechanism. Now, if the second layer of instructions were, hey, Tony, you realize what just happened on comms, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute. Just don't do that until you're ready to switch with Lois, and then he could still do it on his timing, but he has to do it based on my request pop-up that's on his screen. So there, it's a workaround.
If you ask to unmute him and he so this stays the whole time, he can do it all the time, or is it like after 5 minutes?
Away. Yeah, so Tony, I'm going to shut your video off again. I'm going to ask to start, but don't respond to it, and let's just let that sit there and simmer for a while, and we'll check back with you, or if you can write in the chat and let us know, hey, that little pop-up request finally disappeared on its own. That's the question. We're looking to see if that pop-up request will stay there for 20 minutes, maybe, until it's your turn to take over for Lois. So very good. That was on a Robert.
I think it'll be interesting once we've finished this exercise for Lois and Tony to come out of their interpretation roles and talk to us about what they saw from the interpreter's point of view, so we can understand that. Yeah, agreed.
And Mike?
Yeah, I was wondering if you did start with Tony, and that Tony is number one, and Robert is making the point of the first interpreter being sort of in, as we're calling it, in control. Basically, what ends up happening if Tony is the first one, and then you went to Lois, and now Lois is currently on, can you remove Tony as the first one and then add him back in again? Robert's saying no. Oh, you can add him back in.
Sorry, you can add him back in.
But he won't be the primary, I don't suspect, will he?
No, his slot will stay there. We can test that and just run that.
Yeah.
What I was saying no to was Lois won't jump into that slot automatically.
Okay, so the first person is now officially then designated as gone if Tony's gone.
Yeah, but we can try that because I'm not 100% sure, so I think it would be worth just looking at that.
So let's I think that's a worthy path to go down. I'm not sharing anymore, but I'll talk it out loud. Is if I have the manage interpretation window up, the first interpreter is Tony, the second interpreter is Lois. The kind of the first thing is, will interpreter one fall out of the list if Tony disconnects from the meeting? And Robert's thought is he won't. Now, I would add to that, will he eventually? Because Zoom does a great job. I've done it in the past in this meeting as the host. I'll literally go to my network settings in my PC and I disable my network card. And that's an abrupt disconnect, right? And if I then re-enable it, I can be back in that meeting as the host it's amazing how quick it can happen if I regain connectivity, fairly quickly. But I think we tested it for like up to 2 minutes, I believe, before Zoom actually gave me up as the host, reassigned somebody else. And when I came back, it was like a new entry. Do I want to be host or co-host? And
Jeff, I just wanted to clarify what my suggestion is Tony not to ever leave the meeting. Let's say Tony was done as you were giving the example before, he did his hour stint as sign language person, and then he joined the meeting. Then all of a sudden somebody got sick that was supposed to replace him, and you've already removed him as an interpreter in the list. Could you add him back as a second?
Oh, I can't imagine that would be a problem. So I'm going to remove Tony from the list right now. Okay. He's gone. Now it's just Lois. I'm clicking on update. Tony should be back in the gallery. I'm looking. Yeah, he's there. No camera, but he's back there. I'll say ask to start video. You can go ahead and respond to that video request now, Tony, if you like.
And Jeff, in the interpreters panel, did Lois jump up? What can we see? What?
Yeah. So there were 2 in the list. Number 1 was Tony. Number 2 was Lois. Now, if I pop that panel up, it happened. I just closed it. But if I pop it back up, there's only 1 interpreter, because I'm the one who removed Tony's number 1 slot before. And the number 1 is now Lois. So now let me add a new interpreter. Go ahead.
Wait, just before you do that. So Lois is now the number 1. So now it all
there's
depends
only one.
On.
She's number 1.
Right.
And she's also the only one.
Right, but I guess, Robert, I think you were saying that she doesn't jump up to that first interpreter status, and it sounds like maybe she has. I don't know.
But I explicitly removed Tony. I think Robert's comment may have been more about Tony departing, not me undefining him. So we'll keep that in your mind so we can test that out too. Let me add Tony back in and see if there's any memory in Zoom that Tony used to be number 1 and or not. I'll go there. I'll add him here. It's putting him in as number 2 right now. I'll select him, American Sign Language, hit update, and there. So he left the gallery. His camera, I can see iconically, is still on, but we don't see him in the ASL window. If I bring the manage dialog back up, he remains in the list as number 2. Tony.
By the way, it is interesting that Lois's hand is raised. We can see, even in the ASL window, that she has her hand raised. I wonder if that could be a signal to another interpreter.
So. Yeah. No, I think that could very well work.
Well, that's tricky because they're actually using
busy.
their hands. Their hands are busy. They don't have time to touch the keyboard.
So what they'd have to do is get a Stream Deck foot pedal with OSC that would raise their hand and lower it, and they could just use their foot.
Beautiful, Jeff. Perfect.
Yeah, that would work. All right, so Lois, go ahead and mute your camera, and we'll confirm that Tony just pops in as the ASL signer. There he is. He's back. And then you turned your camera back on, Lois.
Lois really wants to speak.
I need to. Oh, I love being able to mute Lois. There you go.
So the interesting thing that I found is that little window, your interpreter window, where you see a picture, look on the edges and around, because there's more than one of us. There's at the top where you can have it minimized 1 person or 2 people, so you can have both of us showing at the same time. But I do think that I'm primary, but I'm not sure.
You are. You are primary because when you turned your camera back on, you controlled the change. When you turned it off, it changed, and when you turned yours back on, it commanded the change as well. Because Tony's camera is still on, but he has no power to actually switch the ASL window back to himself. That's
Tony,
I'm sorry. Wait, Lois, hold on. I'm sorry. Can you just clarify? In your ASL window, you can see both you and Tony?
Well, of course, can't you?
No.
You don't have that little thing at the top that's got the three. Ooh.
No. Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Could you add a third person?
I'm going to add more than a third person. So I'm going to add an interpreter. Who wants to see it? Does Ray, you want to see it?
You can put me in if you want. I've spoken enough.
David, I'll put you out there.
Because this actually could be used, if you wanted to, as a back channel then.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you want it as, as a back channel for sure. So if I add David, sign language, here we go.
So Lois, just for my sake too, to add on to what David was asking, so you can actually see both you and Tony at the same time in your window.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. Well, I can choose that. There's you can see both of us. You can see just me, or it says primary, and then it folds down to just a little, whatever you call it. Oh no! Wait a minute. There's 4 of us now.
Yeah.
At 5 of us, everybody in there. And I have little arrows that go different ways. So can all of my co-interpreters
So do you have, now, do you all see that I've added you?
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you have, so this is my question. I can't assume make sense logic beyond 2 interpreters until you have now said that you can see multiples. Does that strip of multiple interpreters give you the power beyond 2 people to make the switch? Because like Lois, if you turn off your camera, so far it's gone to number 2.
It goes to Tony. If Tony, turn off your camera.
Yeah, but how would it know to go to number 3 or number 4? That's that's where I lose any logic.
The order in which you assigned us. You did David next.
I get that, but the auto switching. So when you turn your camera off,
it goes to the next one that has a camera on.
I guess it's his first on, and then you turn it off, and then them, and then they turn theirs off. So
if Tony had his camera off, which is right now on. If you could turn yours off, Tony, then when I switch mine off, it should jump over Tony to the 3rd interpreter. And it did.
Well, but I want all cameras on, and I want you to be the one we're seeing. So let's go there, all 4. So now you're finished. And so you're going to turn your camera off, and it's going to go
to Tony.
To number 2.
To Tony.
Go ahead. Tony, turn your camera on. You're on. Now you're on. So now, Tony, you turn your camera off, and number 3 is David. Now it's David. Now, I know if Lois turns her camera back on, she'll come back on screen. We've seen that already. But if Tony turns his camera on, what will happen? So Tony, go ahead and turn your camera back on. And he actually, not the number 1 position, but the number 2 position.
Okay, it takes precedence. I'm first, he's second, they're third, fourth, fifth. Takes precedence.
Well,
so if everybody has their camera off.
What if we go from the bottom of the list up?
Well, we have to all have our cameras off then. Is
it precedence or not? But so let's do this. Lois is on. Who's number 4?
Robert.
John's 5. I want number 1, and I want the last one, John, to be on, and I want number 2, 3, and 4 to be off.
And the nice thing is we can all see that. Okay, so I'm on, John's on. Shall I go away?
Yeah, you go away, and who's going to come up?
Mm-hmm.
So it's bypassed all the other interpreters that because their cameras were off,
Right.
And John is up. Now,
so John, turn yours off and see what happens.
No, don't turn it off. I want Robert to turn his on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And John is still on, but it responded to Robert.
Because he's higher in the list.
John, bounce your camera now. Off and then back on.
John's only going to show if everybody else is off.
Yeah, Jeff,
now,
the easiest way that I can explain it to you is
two, how about Tony? Tony, can you bounce your camera on and off? Now off and now back on. See, he came back. I don't know what logic. I can't figure out what logic
it's easy. It's easy.
Yeah, Jeff, the easiest way I can explain it to you, think of it as a pyramid in a flow chart. So basically you've got your primary, then you go down on your children, right? So you got your first, and then you can go down to 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's basically it's all in the hierarchy of, again, lowest will always have full control, as Robert was saying, right, Robert? Where basically position number 1 will be always.
What's full control? Because I just saw Tony and John have the power to turn their cameras on and off, and maybe the person above them came back,
but the person who shows is the one with the higher number. If more than one camera is on, then you look at the higher number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm number 1. If I'm on, I'm always going to show no matter what. But if everybody else has their camera on, they only show if all the people above them have their cameras off.
Jeff, can you reorder them? Can you reorder them, Jeff?
No.
Not without kicking us out and starting us over again.
Yeah, it's just
you could kick me out if you want. I know you want to.
I'd be happy to. Absolutely.
All right, I'll be quiet for a little while.
No, that's all right. So, okay. And what was I was going to go down a trail here.
Hey, Jeff.
What it was.
When you made me an interpreter, did you click allow to speak for me?
No.
Okay.
Co-host, but you're a co-host.
No, I know. I'm just saying. As a co-host, even when you assign me as an interpreter, I remain in the gallery and I still have the ability to speak.
That's true. Yeah, it'd be a uncommon combination, I guess. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, but definitely as you're signing, they're going to see you twice if they're looking at the gallery.
So if you removed co-host from one of those, would they then disappear from the gallery but stay in the interpreter?
So David is on. David is co-host. David is now not co-host, and he left the gallery.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm. So it's easily fixable. Yeah. So do you have, I don't think I ever heard an answer. So you have the strip of 5 interpreters right now. Is there any controls? Is there any right clicks? No. Is there any 3 dots? There's nothing that you are able to do with that helps it make a decision or whatnot.
I can do chat and hide non-video participants, and those are my only 2 options.
So I'm just what I'm really trying to dig into is like, how much education and knowledge do the interpreters need to have to see a strip of more than 2 people? Because that's easy, that's back and forth. But how much do they need to have once it gets to becoming 3 or more interpreters so that they know when they go offline who, it's got to be the one that they agreed to the switch, right? And that's actually going to be the switch that logically occurs. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get down to is if I can understand the logic, then I can teach that to a group of interpreters on the way into a meeting, for instance.
Are you still having trouble understanding the logic?
Heck yeah, I am. I mean, there's a little bit there, but from kind of a top-down approach. But what about when you get through that list and you start working your way back up? And,
think of ranked choice voting. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah. All right. Well, it certainly it works and has flexibility. I just need to spend a little more time with just several different combinations, So, and I mean, and then at the end of the world, how hard do I chase this? Because I actually in church in person, when they're in person in the same spot, it's not a big deal. I don't care whether there's 15 interpreters who are going to share the responsibility. So tap somebody on a shoulder and go, but when 4 people are in 4 different areas of the world having to do a queue and then know that the technology is going to accurately make the switch and, so forth. And we don't have, any, I can't create a new order. I'd have to rebuild the order if we had that. But it seems like there's going to be something pre-agreed on, like if they walk in as human beings in this role and they know that they have to be in the top half of the group because of timing, they're limited on time. They said they could do it for 30 minutes, whatever, and then they've got to go. Well, I can't put them as number 4 in the list. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't even be on till later. But you go, well, no, you could. Because if you tell number 2 and 3 to shut their cameras off when number 1 goes offline, it'll go to number 4, So you can, but yeah, it's just, and then you have to measure all that against kind of natural human behavior. Will they, do they have to manage their camera? And
Jeff,
and if their camera's not on, how they have to have an external queuing mechanism, right? This agreeance, if their cameras are all on, then they could do a visual cue behind the scenes, and with the exception of the live one, and be a little more prepared. So yeah, I'll be very interested in learning more and getting a little more comfortable with how it switches beyond 2 interpreters. I mean, I know it switches, but in real life, how
in real life, and when we take Zoom out of the equation, Jeff, I would know from the beginning that I'm interpreting after David. And I would just wait for David to come in real life.
So didn't it do that? Did it? If David was first and you are second, and that's the only 2 that are defined, you have to remind me. If your camera was off and David shut his off, did it turn yours on? Or did yours need to be on?
Mine needed to be on, but it doesn't switch anyone's camera on at any point.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we did the test earlier, Jeff, when you did it between Lois and Tony,
it came to the profile picture. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. So that's kind of a, that's a bit of a, yeah, I see. Hang on, David. Should I just pull you out of translator? I can do that too. Now you're.
I think you should give us all.
You're not a translator, and you're not a co-host, David. Hang on. He changed his name. Can you allow me to speak? That's funny.
That's
because you weren't reading the chat.
But you know what
I can't talk and read chat at the same time.
You know what I wanted to Jeff, I just want to share that when I was back there, even when my camera was off, I still had up at the top, it still said your video is live in interpretation, even when my camera was off.
Interesting.
I thought was interesting.
All right. Any other tests or combinations on this, or have we beat it to death for a day?
Jeff, I got a quick question.
I'm going to shut interpretation off real quick so everybody can participate here. There we go.
Jeff, do I assume right that you have an account-wide setting for co-hosts to local record or to cloud record?
Co-hosts don't have to be granted local.
No, but I see that all your co-hosts are recording. And I wonder if this is like account-wide setting that you activated.
I would guess that's probably because ZoomISO is in the meeting, and that icon might carry into the co-host. I'm not But it says cloud there. I mean, that's actually a cloud record. So if you're a co-host, it's just indicating that it's doing a cloud record there.
Jeff, can I just correct you on this one? As soon as you make someone a co-host, that person loses his local recording and has the ability to switch off the cloud recording.
Yeah. So I'll add a tiny little piece of clarity. They lose their local recording privilege if there's a cloud recording actively being recorded. If it's not actively being recorded, they could either start a cloud or they could start a local, right?
They can start a local ahead of time, I think, but not after they've become. Once the cloud recording is going, I can't start a local recording. But if I start a local recording beforehand, then the cloud recording won't kill mine.
My experience.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting scenario to me because
that's
it makes sense that you could start a record, start a local record, and then I make you a co-host. Can you stop your local record without stopping the cloud?
No.
I don't think.
No. If the local, this is how ISO works. So you can start ISO before the cloud recording begins, if you have permissions, either to local record or as co-host, and then you can start the cloud recording, and then you can control both.
One addition to
I
this?
wasn't even trying to bring ISO into the scenario. Like, let's say disregard ISO for a moment. If you come in as an attendee, first, you can't start a local record without me giving you the privilege to do so in my meeting. You can't start recording without me saying you can. And I don't have to make you co-host to do that. I can just say you have the rights to record. So if you start that, then what happens? You start, I grant you privilege, you start a local, I then make you, I start a cloud recording as a host, and then I make you a co-host. What happens to the control that you have had maybe to your local recording? Because now as a co-host, your primary touch has always, my experience has been to the cloud recording.
And I think that is different now than it used to be, because your co-hosts now can stop the cloud recording. And I have actually not become a co-host at that point, but I know that I can start a local recording and then the host can start a cloud recording and we're both okay. It's just I can't do it the opposite way. Once they start the cloud recording, I cannot. Even if I had permission, I cannot as a participant record.
Yeah.
Jeff, I mean, can we just test
ISO kind of supports one piece of this, and that is I have to stop the cloud, like this meeting auto starts a cloud recording. Because I'm using ZoomISO, I have to stop the cloud record, get ISO into the meeting, and give it co-host. And now its presence, which is grabbing video, right? That all runs through the same privilege set that exists inside of Zoom as a local record. That's why when ZoomISO is present these days in a meeting, it says the meeting's being recorded. And it doesn't have to be a cloud recording. Just because ZoomISO's here and it's been given co-host, it looks like, and reports to everybody that the meeting's being recorded, then I can start the cloud. And we know that the host can then start the cloud. Quite well. Maybe the answer to my question is over here. If I go over to my ZoomISO client, which is a co-host, the recording. So I have the status up on the top left that says the meeting's being recorded. It's only the local icon, which is a circle with a red dot, versus the cloud with a red dot. So it doesn't show me in the ZoomISO client that this meeting is actually being cloud recorded, nor do I have the ability. I don't have in my toolbar of ZoomISO, I don't have anything to do with recording. So even though ZoomISO is a co-host, I can't stop or start recording at all, local or cloud, and which is an interesting find. I've never looked at it that way with those eyes on. So now that's ZoomISO too.
You really can't do it? Or is it because the cloud recording is in progress now?
Well, no. Here, I'll share the screen with you.
How do we get out of being interpreters? Can do I have to leave the meeting in order to not be interpreter?
I turned sign language off, but I thought that would, but it just turned it off to the audience. I'll remove you from the definition.
I'm still seeing
We're
it.
still on. We're still on.
You
just turned it off for you to view.
Nope, now it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone now. Well, yeah, no, it's true. So yeah, my first. So interesting. Realizing that was just what I was seeing that I turned off the first time. Mm-hmm. I went in and I deleted all the assigned interpreters, and then I clicked the end red button, which killed everything, right? Then I popped the management window back up, and there's a start button because I ended it, but all the previous definitions are there.
So if you started, you'd be there?
I didn't update. Yeah, that was the miss. I didn't update. I just deleted them and hit end, which didn't clear the database, if you will. So interesting. Okay. All right. So I'm sharing got to stop doing that because it's not showing the toolbar. Let me do it this way. The Mac desktop. So here's the Mac desktop with the so this gallery view, this is the Zoom client via ZoomISO. I mean, that's what ZoomISO is, right? So it's a Zoom client. I could host the meeting from this if I wanted to. But anyways, so there's the indication of the recording up here. I actually had, but you can see that it's local, right? Because it's a circle instead of a cloud. But then down on the toolbar, there's no control. There's no button at all for the cloud. So there's zero indication in this client that there's a cloud recording going on right now. And then there's zero control to stop, because I'm not really locally recording. It's just using those privileges. So it kind of reports that. So I don't have, but I guess the find or the discussion point here is, even though I'm a co-host in this client doing what it's doing, I don't see the cloud recording happening, and I have zero control over turning it on or off, even as a co-host, because it's an ISO co-host, I guess. Interesting. Okay.
What is under more, Jeff? The three dots? You don't have to show it only.
Yeah. It's just it's limited to show focus mode.
Copy. Thank you.
Yeah. Part of my prep today was to figure out how to quickly and easily do a Zoom on my Mac as a presenter. And it's like, I have a touchpad, so I just double tap with 3 fingers and it zooms in and zooms out. So,
but it zooms in and out your complete desktop, right?
Yeah, the whole windows. Well, and but you can make that like split screen or picture in picture or full screen, and so I left it at full screen. And then, but once you set the initial magnification, but then once it's doing its thing, I can 3-finger swipe up or 3-finger swipe down to change the magnification as well. And so pretty cool.
Yeah, I use this regularly.
I hadn't before. I'm like, that's pretty slick.
The annoying thing is if you have multiple displays, it zooms all displays.
No.
This is
I have
David
Ventura.
Found out.
I'm running Ventura, and it let me designate the monitor. And so I have a monitor. I have a second monitor. Oh, I'm wrong. I didn't think it was, but it is. Yeah. No, it is. It's blowing both up.
David and I checked this out once in after hours, and because there was a need for a magnification tool for Mac, and we thought this could work, but it also zooms the second screen, and then you get messed up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's doing the second screen. Like my magnification is doing the second screen, but if I move up, yeah, you can. There's part of my second screen. Oh, you can't see it. That. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, the interesting. So I'm seeing it, but the screen capture from NDI screen capture keeps them separate, even though on my physical screen I'm seeing right now I've scrolled up and I'm seeing a magnified half of my upper screen, but the screen capture makes no difference to that. Actually, the screen capture is not even magnifying.
Welcome
it stays
to
the same.
Yep. Welcome to the world. It does the same thing on a PC even if you're using something like Zoom Text.
Yeah.
It does not send.
I thought I was doing you guys a favor. I'm like clicking in and zooming in, and you guys aren't even seeing it.
Yeah.
The screen capture doesn't accommodate.
You could share screen.
No, share screen takes it to. It grabs the full screen and takes it back down to original ratio. It doesn't zoom it.
Oh, is that right? I gotta try that.
Yep.
Share portion of screen, that doesn't work?
So if I share this desktop, the reason I wasn't using share and now it's doing it is it wasn't showing me the Zoom windows, and now it is.
No, it's not. We see nothing but a beautiful landscape.
I see it captured. I'm looking at the screen capture, but yeah, via the share, it's not outputting the Zoom windows. So that's why I opted out of that. But if let me
but couldn't you activate this?
Let me go. Let me bring a window down. Now you'll see my browser, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now if I zoom in, that zoomed in.
But your desktop never zooms. Yeah, your desktop never zooms. If you
you're talking about the whole desktop versus inside the app itself.
Yes, the system.
Oh yeah, you're right.
The actual window it grabs. You can't even do that with specialized software.
So I did a 3-finger tap and it zoomed the whole window, but not in the share. But if I double tap inside the browser, that goes through the share. Interesting.
Yes, it's welcome to the world of accessibility and the weird things it will and won't do with magnification.
Yeah. Huh. Now there's if I do a what does it do with this one? Command plus, I thought it was. Not seeing it happening though. Used to use that.
If you're on a Mac if you have your accessibility involved, I'm not looking. It's option, alt option. It's the two right there together will sometimes with the plus. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's Windows that I usually do the window key plus, and then it'll pop up my magnifier window.
On Mac, you have to enable it in the settings, and then it's your command key, the key to the left of it, which I think is the control.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember.
Command option.
Command option plus. Yes, command option plus. Thank you, Lois. I'm not looking at a Mac keyboard, so I'm looking at a Windows keyboard.
You're welcome.
Command option plus, if it's enabled in the accessibility settings, will zoom.
It is
just like your Windows key plus.
So you're saying that goes through a share or not?
No, that still will not go through the share.
So I just want to test that out for sure. And so I have command option plus zoomed in. Yeah, so that doesn't do it for
It's a
desktop
thing in
or the
Zoom.
application.
Yeah.
The double tap under accessibility, which I enabled today, the double tap and triple tap, if it's inside a browser, it works, but outside the app to the desktop, it doesn't. Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. All right. So let's, is this in context or going out of context?
Is his next question?
Yeah. So that I had a feeling that was there because timing wise, we're certainly there. Anything else? I just want to ask real quick. Anything else around this conversation before we change topic? Nothing. Go, Lois.
Okay, I've got three. The first two are similar, and the second one is just cookies. So and I sent this to you, Jeff, a few days ago or before the last show, but I don't think it got asked. So here's my question. How do you turn off all the spotlighting at once? Assuming I've got 4 people spotlit.
Yep.
How do I turn them off to get back to a gallery view?
Sure. So let me share my screen. You'll see my Zoom gallery. I'm going to spotlight Lois. I'm going to spotlight Frank. I'll spotlight Pete and John. And then if you go to view, you can remove all spotlights.
You can?
Yep.
Is that something you have to set up ahead of time, or is that just because you're the host or what?
Host or co-host. I'll make you a co-host. And go ahead and multi-spotlight and confirm that you can.
Okay, you're
that too.
Okay, I can't spotlight any more people because with your screen share, I can't see anybody but the person who's spotlighting.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Let me try something else. Okay. And I can't spotlight that person. Add.
Frank's getting cleaned up. Clean yourself up. You're on camera.
Okay, so there are 3 people there, and remove all spotlights.
It's going to be creepy when she appears on somebody else's screen and starts cleaning them up next.
Yeah, she walks around each one of us. That's good.
That would be good. We should figure out something to do that, something like that. Okay, so that's wonderful.
Okay.
So, then I guess I don't have to ask the second question, which is if I change to gallery view, then remove spotlights, the order jumps around. And I need to figure out what order I would want to set it in before I spotlight people so that it wouldn't jump when I turn them off.
Well, the order is only changing in the gallery because of spotlighting. It's only changing because of spotlighting. Because when there's active spotlights, so if I share again real quick, it's kind of small, but I'll use my zooming tool. So if I spotlight Pete and then I go, well, I'll spotlight 2, and then I go back to the gallery view and I'm going, who's spotlit? It's this tiny little icon on the bottom left corner. And they always go to the top left and across. All the spotlights are top left and across, whether it's 1 or 2 or 4 or 6, up to 9. And so when you remove all spotlights, even from the gallery view, those 2 will fall back to where they came from, and it shifts everybody back up. So that's the movement. That's the cause of the movement you're talking about.
So if I know who I'm going to have spotlight in what order, because I mean, this is a show. I know ahead of time what I'm going to do. So if I put them in gallery view, so they're 1, 2, 3, 4 at the top, and then I start spotlighting and I add 1 and I add 1 and I add 1 and I add 1. Now they're all 4 up there. Then when I remove spotlight, it shouldn't do anything. It shouldn't change it, should it?
So I've custom ordered. I've custom ordered 4 of us: me, you, Robert, and John. We're the 4 across on my share, and so I can go here and I can tell everybody else to follow this view, which is usually the intention. Sometimes it's just personal, and that's okay. Now this is already saved just for me. It didn't change anything for you. And so I'll leave it just for me, these 4 across the top.
But it's spotlight.
But I'm going to spotlight.
But you're sharing,
Frank.
so we can't see gallery view.
You're seeing my gallery view. And you're really asking in the context of you. So I'm playing the role of you right now.
Yeah.
And that, so I'm the one. I've got the custom view. This is you. You've got this custom view. Now I'm going to spotlight somebody who's not in the custom view, because they're going to cause a shift of that custom view, right? So I spotlight Frank, and then I go back to gallery. Now he has shifted all 4 of us. We're still in the same order. We're just shifted like a puzzle, 1 spot over. Let me go ahead and spotlight Pete as well. And now we're shifted 2 over. First spotlight is Frank, second one is Pete, and they'll stack up behind, and we'll keep shifting over. But with the moment I remove all spotlights, there it is, then we all shift back up right where I had us 4. Now, if you wanted to see this, I'm going to tell it to follow host view, and I'll kill my share. Now you'll see this happen on your screen as well.
With spotlighting the first 4 or the first 3 or whatever, in what order do you add them so that your gallery view stays in the order we're seeing right now? So do I spotlight Jeff, Lois, and Robert, or Robert, Lois, and Jeff?
I don't know that.
You start with Jeff and then Lois and then Robert.
I think that's going to reverse it.
You're saying if I want to add the spotlights of this 4 defined people up on the top row, but not shift them, I'd have to go left to right. And so I'll do that. I'm going to spotlight me.
And add Lois.
Now I'm going to spotlight Lois.
Yeah, and then add Robert. Okay. Now switch to
this
gallery view.
This is so much faster on a Stream Deck with OSC.
So this is switch to gallery view, please.
Yeah, and I'm good. Now I'm adding John. So those are the 4, right, in the order that I had customized in my gallery view. Now I'm going to go back to gallery. Now John actually.
Yeah, they're backwards order, aren't they,
Jeff? That's what I thought. Can you go to gallery view so we can see it?
Well, I'm not sharing anymore. But
I would have to go to gallery. Let me go to gallery. Wait, I've got my gallery up because everybody's gallery view is individual and personal. Okay, got it. Now what happens when you remove?
Well, it's not right now because I'm actually telling the audience to follow the host video order. So my gallery is Jeff, John, Lois, and Robert right now.
And mine is Jeff, Lois, Robert, and John.
Mine is the same as Lois.
Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah. So you don't share the order of the gallery, you arranged it.
So Jeff, can you take off, can you kill all spotlights now?
Yep. Done.
Nothing changed on my screen. Did anything change on yours, Jeff?
Mine changed.
Yeah, I went back to my
so you
follow host
so you've
video
answered
order.
My question.
You should be seeing top left Jeff, then Lois, then Robert, then John.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but when yours reversed, ours didn't.
Yeah, mine reversed because of spotlights, not because of follow host definition.
So when I'm recording, and the purpose is to get a recording, I will need to put people in the reverse order that I want to add them to Spotlight. So when I take them off, they won't move.
What are you recording? Gallery
It's
or
a show.
spotlights?
It's
no,
a show.
But are you recording? What do you want as the recording? The spotlights or the gallery?
When I have had someone spotlighted, and then for the host on my personal thing, I switch to gallery, and then I'm recording, and it will record gallery, I believe.
Yeah.
No, Lois, as I understand it, when you add somebody to a spotlight on spotlight view, they will appear on the right. When you add somebody to the spotlight on the gallery view, they appear on the left. That's what I've just seen happen.
They appear on the right when?
When you add somebody, if you have one person on the spotlight and then you add a second person, they always appear after on the right.
Yeah.
But on the gallery view, when you add a spotlight, on the gallery view, they appear on the left.
Right.
They push all the others. So they're back to front. So one's
the
one
host.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all opposite way around. So what you're trying to do is going to be hard.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't matter as long as when I have the gallery view and then I release all the spotlights, it doesn't swap it around on my computer. And I can figure that out. I've got enough information on that, though.
So do you want, is your desire to actually have the gallery recording, or are you trying to figure this out because that's behavior is okay.
I want to record what I see. And I think from the previous recording I did that when I switch from speaker view to gallery view, the recording also switches from speaker to gallery.
Yeah. In almost all cases, the source of the recording comes from the host's computer. Yep. So even if I joined your meeting and you made me host, now the recording will be reflected by what's on my computer, because now I'm the host. And so it follows the host. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that if you want the gallery, then now
I just have to switch from speaker to gallery, and that's good.
You can switch from speaker to gallery, and you aren't using ZoomOSC yet, are you?
No, I'm not using anything like that. Nothing fancy.
We'll get you there.
Oh, because I don't know. You already got me this silly links.
It could be so seamless. You can control that. You can control that order, and it's all, it can be push button and not, it's just faster, smoother, and so forth. So
yeah, we used to use the big production tools and everything, but that's not available anymore. So we're figuring out other things. So it comes to my last question for the day. Okay. Focus. So I'm no longer doing a webinar. I'm doing a meeting, and I'm just cutting people to get things and replacing a frame with a picture and stuff like that. It's all very simple. I want to have an audience. I don't want them to be able to say anything or interrupt us. So I could mute everybody and then just unmute the people. I'd of course make them co-hosts, the four that are going to be speaking. Is there a benefit from using focus rather than just muting everybody and unmuting the ones you want to have?
So this is what I do. I manage this meeting a couple times a month for this UK author, and there's anywhere between like 250 on some titles of her meetings up to the larger ones are 950 people in a meeting. And to manage that audio, you can have people managing it and so forth, but you're only so fast as a human with a mouse. It's just kind of nutty. So we've gone to mute upon entry. Do not allow attendees to unmute themselves. My hand keeps making me blurry. There we go. And so they can't. So there are no more interruptions audibly. It's just the speaker. But one might ask, why are you putting 900 people in a meeting instead of like a webinar? And that's because part of her meeting is the opportunity. She's a very popular author, and it means something for people to be able to be spotlit next to her, ask her a question, have a discussion, and so forth. And so it's part of the value of what they're buying into. So even when, just to know, here's one of those behavior things, to know the behavior of it. When you say allow participants to unmute themselves, that's disabled. So they can't unmute themselves. They came in the meeting and got muted, and now they can't unmute themselves. But now it's time. They've raised their digital hand, and my voice of God says the name. I know she's going to say the person on the top left, as long as their camera is on. And I will select ask to unmute.
Right. Yep.
And then I spotlight them. By the time I get them spotlit next to the main person, they've responded to the ask to unmute. As long as the host, it completely audibly locked down, but as long as it's me, the host, asking you to unmute, you're allowed to unmute.
Right. That I know. I do that all the time in the Quaker meeting. But the question is what does focus do? That
focus is more
does
of a,
more
it's a video
than
thing.
that.
Well, it does video. So here, I mean, let's do it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 video cameras on right now, but there's 13 systems logged in. Okay. So I'm going to enable start focus mode under the 3 more button here. I'm going to start the focus mode. It says participants will only be able to see the host video, shared content, and videos of spotlighted participants. So I'm in control, even in a meeting. Most people go to webinars because they want that control, but kind of even in a meeting, it gets us very close to that controllable output for the audience. And so
have you done that yet? I mean, have you clicked that?
Oh, I use this at no, I haven't done it yet. Now
there you go. Okay.
So now you see yourself and me. That's probably the only 2 videos you should see right now.
Nope, I see everything. Oh, you're saying the other videos are
videos, yeah.
Okay. So if I switch to gallery, I see 5 videos, but all of the other people have their little icons off.
Yeah, so you see names only, but you see everybody else's video?
Well, if I'm in gallery view, I see 5 videos.
Jeff, Lois is a co-host.
Oh, thank you.
You're going to take away my powers?
You asked for it.
Oh. Yeah. Now I see
me and you,
Jeff,
right?
And Robert. I see Jeff, Lois, Robert, and the rest are all.
So it shows the co-hosts as well.
Co-hosts, yeah.
Yeah. So
and I can still move around the squares, so I can drag things around.
ZoomISO. I'm going to leave that one. But there's a host and a co-host. The co-host doesn't have a camera on, so you don't see the JW
I see
ZoomISO.
you and me,
you see
and that's
the label
of
me
what?
And who?
I see Lois and Jeff.
That's it. Because
the rest have names.
Yeah, they have names, but you don't see anybody. So you're saving bandwidth. You're removing distractions. And you're in now. That's in gallery view. So if I now, as the host in focus mode, if I spotlight myself, now it's forced you to speaker mode to see just me, right? It's not to say that you can't go back to gallery.
I don't know if it forced or not. I was on speaker mode already. So if you add another, so if you were to say pick Robert and spotlight Robert right now, could you do that?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do that.
So
Let's see what happens.
As the host, I can see everybody's video that's on, but you can't. But you can once I spotlight them.
Now I see you and Robert spotlighted.
That's right. And then I might introduce him, and then maybe I remove myself, and now it's just Robert.
And at that point, would when you spotlight someone, does it automatically allow them to unmute themselves?
No.
You have to do that separately. Okay.
Yeah, that's separate management. And there, I mean, I'll just speak to it. It's not like I'm trying to sell anything, but Companion with ZoomOSC will let you build a single button that has multiple actions attached to it. And so you push one button that says Spotlight Robert, request to unmute, and away you go, and lower his hand. Say he got there because he raised his hand. So it'll lower his hand, it'll spotlight him, and it will request to unmute all in one button press. And then when he's finished, you can either untoggle that button, so it could just be button on, button off, and then at that point it will reverse that entire thing. It'll unspotlight him, it will remute him, and he goes away. And so it takes these multiple kind of sometimes pretty precision mouse points and clicks to just a button press. And that button can sit there with nobody's name in it until that ZoomOSC client joins the meeting, and then those buttons can auto-populate with the participants.
So you have to have a ZoomOSC client as well as this button pusher thing you're talking about.
Well, you don't have to have a physical device. You can actually use Companion. Companion's free. And
Companion is not a physical device?
Companion is not. That. So the physical device, that's called a Stream Deck. Companion is software.
Companion and okay.
But Companion, if I go over to my Mac desktop, there's my Mac desktop. And if I bring up Companion, you go, oh, that looks a little bit
Jeff, you're in focus view, so we can't see it.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Oh, I need to spotlight me, and then you'll see it.
Or turn off focus view.
So you see my camera now, right? And I'll spotlight my camera. And I'll remove Robert. All right. So this is Companion. Now it installs on my computer, but then it functions in a browser. This is Chrome. And so it lets you build, buttons that are definable and so forth. So with that, once you've got them built with, some actions or whatnot behind them, then you can click on Emulator. And if you had, it can be your desktop, just like it is right now, because it's in the emulator. I can just click on these buttons. They're live. I mean, if I had this program to do something, it would be doing it right now.
Would that allow you to assign a keyboard button to do that function?
You got to try to say that again.
So I have an F16, F17, F18, F19. I have designated those to be turn on chat
on your keyboard. Yeah, so it's similar. So the answer is yes.
So
but
that thing can do that?
It takes one. So the way Companion works is vendors like ZoomOSC, vMix, Ecamm, they write some code to make their product work with Companion. And so you download that library and you search for it here. The one that I'm going to speak to is this one called Vicrio. And Vicrio lets you add that button to Companion, and Vicrio resides on your computer, and it's a listener that says, hey, they just pressed this button on Companion. That means I'm supposed to press your F16 key on your keyboard. And so it's just, it can hear the call and you can press the key. It could do a lot more than that, but what you could do on your keyboard and with your mouse and stuff locally, Companion's a bit extracted all by itself, but with Vicrio listener in between, it can actually couple those things together for you. So that.
So I think I got it. I think I got it backwards. I hear you say that if you go to the Companion in the browser and click something, then Vicrio will press a button on my keyboard. And I'm wondering about the opposite direction. If I press a button on my keyboard, will Vicrio hear that and do the Companion button?
Well, I would to that say, why would you want, if you have Companion and maybe Stream Deck, but you don't have to get a Stream Deck. Companion will work all by itself. why would you be pressing buttons? That's more
So
of
it's
a conversion should have taken place.
Okay.
Like if F16 on your keyboard does something inside your computer for you at a one button press, why would you go out to Companion to make it go do the same thing?
No,
but
what you were saying was that in Companion, you can create a button that will do lower the hand and spotlight the person and ask them to unmute.
Yeah.
In order to do that, I would need to have a browser window open with Companion showing and take my mouse and go click on it. And that's what I'm hearing you say. Is this correct? Yes, Robert.
If you're using it on a desktop, yes. But the ideal, really, I mean, in your case, because you're a computer, right? Single computer, single monitor, right? I call this the ideal. I mean, I have a Stream Deck. That to me is ideal. But if that's not the case, then you go, well, how else could I do this? Because Companion's free, and I like that. I don't want to go spend $250 on a Stream Deck piece of hardware just for buttons, because that's really what it is. Because you can do it on screen. But if you can do it on a web browser on a computer, you can do it on a web browser on a phone, you can do it on a web browser on an iPad. And so that same emulator that I showed you could be on this iPad. Now it's a touchscreen device and you're just pressing buttons on this device. Maybe you already own, I don't know if you have a tablet or not, but the tablet, you're on your Wi-Fi, you open a browser, so if I go back to this screen real quick, you go to this emulator and that address right there, you type that in. As long as your tablet's Wi-Fi is on the same network as your Companion computer, you type in that address. That page, I'll do it right now. It's dead. I need to recharge my my phone.
So
but anyways, when you type that in, the emulator just becomes your tablet screen or your mobile phone screen, and it just becomes a touch device. And so you're just leveraging, a lot of power out of stuff that you already own because Companion's free.
It does not have to be plugged in to the computer or logged into the Zoom or anything. This is just
no. This is you could have your husband sitting next to you back on the couch and he could be on a mobile device as long as it's on Wi-Fi and that Wi-Fi is the same subnet as your Companion computer. Then when he presses a button, something's going to happen.
Actually, it could be on a network anywhere, but that network browser would have to be able to get to that Companion through whatever network.
I just didn't want to go deeper, but I mean, can my computer connect to John's? Yes, via like VPN, and then I look like a local computer on his network, right? And so it's all doable.
So I actually went and bought a new iPad. This is
oh goodness
pretty astonishing. This thing.
Yeah.
This is my new iPad. It's big, it's huge, and I can turn that on and tell my Mac that is the rest of the screen. So I can take something, I just drag it over. So as long as I got the window going, I can drag it over there and suddenly it's on that.
So there's your second monitor.
So there I can, exactly. And so I could try that with this Companion.
Well, but it doesn't, keep in mind, it does not, it doesn't need that connectivity. That
and I couldn't push the button on the iPad.
Yeah, but if you have Wi-Fi in your house, the ability to just have a browser hit that address is to me far simpler than even having to add a display. And I mean, I'm amazed by that. I do the same thing with mine, but not very often. It's
going to work great for reading things, but not for activating things because touching the iPad screen doesn't do anything. You have to pull your mouse over off of your computer onto the iPad screen and do it with the mouse. So I will try what you suggest.
Companion in a browser becomes like a Companion in a browser. If it was the emulator, you could mouse click the button, but you can also touch the button with your finger, and they'll both work. So great points. Hey, congrats! You bought a second screen. Hey, there's somebody in the
my old
waiting.
iPad was
I'll say grip yourself. I don't recognize this name, but I'm going to let somebody in, and if it goes well, that's great.
Lois, you just said your old iPad. You still have your old iPad?
I use it every day.
Okay, so if that's on the same network, then that could be your control device, your old iPad, because you just need any device that runs a browser.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. It doesn't take any power to do it, really. I mean, it doesn't have to be anything powerful.
Yeah, Lois, what I would suggest too is if you can normally browse on your old iPad to Google or anything like that, Companion is a third of the resources of that.
Good. So are you saying I need Companion on both devices or just on the one device?
No, it's just a web page to your iPad.
Okay,
but Companion gets installed on your main computer.
So who did you just let in?
His name is Roland.
Roland Booth. I know that name. How do I know that name?
He's famous.
Roland is
all right.
He's famous now.
Yeah. Very good.
Well, thank you all for answering my questions.
It's been one of those extended meetings. It was great digging into the features. Robert, you're off camera, but I wanted to say thanks a ton. I didn't ask you to contribute so much ahead of time. Sometimes that's helpful, but man, your knowledge, your experience, because of the business you're in, is just invaluable to all of us. So I really appreciate all that you shared and all the testing that we all did together. And I think there's maybe a few more things, nothing that wouldn't amount to just using it and trying it and so forth. But I think it's a good feature. I like the feature a lot, actually. But
it's a super feature, Jeff. And
what's that?
It's a super feature, and I think our next step is just to organize a session on interpretation, just the simultaneous interpretation, because that's a completely different group of features.
Yeah, we can definitely coordinate that. I mean, let's do the verbal language and the signer. I can easily bring a signer, a real one, if you will, who can also, and what I mean by that is not that I'm going to know what he's signing and saying, but he can contribute verbally to the educational piece from that audience's perspective. And you, I think, can do the same, whether it's your wife or somebody else. I don't want it to cost you money, but if you have somebody to bring in on a real translation channel, that would be phenomenal. And then just that's what's been so helpful to me, anyways, is understanding where they're coming from, what their requirements are, what even becomes convenient for them, so that you allow them to not be burdened with anything more than just their job, but that'd be great.
I can definitely ask my wife to come in, and because she can give the perspective of an interpreter.
Cool.
It's different. Cool. It's very different.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Frank, anything else from you, sir? No? So laid back. I need to move to Canada just so I can relax, man. Mike is like, those two things don't mean anything together. Lois.
So I have always enjoyed coming to Zoom Test Kitchen, and unfortunately I now have a client that means I'm going to be busy every Friday during our time together. So I won't be here much, but I'll think about you. And today being the day after Thanksgiving, I was off. That's good. I want to invite all of you to come and be in the audience and make the show, the Birding with Lois show. And so I'm going to tell you my website address, and feel free to check it out and come join us sometime. It'll be probably next year before we're doing more productions, but I'd love to see you show up sometime. So I will put that in the chat.
Appreciate that.
I'm going to say it. I'm just going to say it. And then people out there in the real world, they can join us too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
birdingwithlois.global is the website.
Birding with
BIRDING with Lois, LOIS .global.
I because of you, I often, you'll see one of my two DSLRs with a long lens on it on top of our piano in the living room, which is full of bay windows, and it looks out our backyard there. And because we get, I haven't gotten a good cardinal shot yet, but we get cardinals on occasion right now. And the other day I was trying to get this squirrel. It was not a bird, but he's pretty cool. But anyways, you've given me the bug a bit to try to capture. It's kind of fun. So anyways, appreciate what you do. All right. Well, everybody, enjoy your weekend. Anything, Pete, before we call it a night?
Nice to be back here for a while.
Yeah, good to see you, bud.
I've been quite busy with live events. I spoke with Ed a couple of weeks ago. He's pretty much doing the same thing like I am.
Yeah,
constantly at work. So
yeah, I'm not an absolute constant, but been pretty busy with live. I know I've got some gigs lined up in December for sure, just freelance outsourcing, but they're travel. I got to go up to this one production company in the Dakotas I do a lot of work for, and anywhere from cam to virtual to TD and their switches now. But yeah, there's a lot going on out there, so it's fun to get the exposure, travel a little bit. It's kind of cool to get out.
Yeah, I've been
not nonstop.
I'm in Portland. I've been to Boston about a dozen plus times this year to do either live events or TV camera work or film work. So
very good. Well, keep it going, man. Very good. John, it's kind of late, isn't it? Isn't it about 12 o'clock midnight there?
Well, thank you to all the time zone changes. It's now just 11 o'clock.
Oh, it's only 11 now. So
we're
here. Yeah. We're 6 hour offset right now.
Whatever you did, your voice is now sharp and clear.
It's called putting a headset mic on and not leaving it on the desk.
Yeah.
I'll do it. Yeah.
That's funny. Hey, this mic that's here, it swings away and goes, 180 around and it stays out of my way. I can't tell you how many times I've, hurried to my seat and start talking and the mic's still way over there. I'm like, come on. Anyways, well, always good to get together. And I think Thanksgiving is a North American holiday, right? It happens in Canada and the U.S. So if
I heard a few countries do it, but it's not the same date
is that right?
How we do it in the U.S. So.
I looked it up online, and they said it was North America. I did not know that till the other day, but now I just saw Frank shake his head like, no, that's not true. Is that what I saw, Frank? Do you guys celebrate a Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we had ours a long time ago.
Oh, so it is a totally different date.
Yeah, it's in October.
And it's a totally different thing, too.
No, it's the same thing. Turkey and stuffing and all that stuff.
Did yours start out as a fall festival and then morph, or was it a religious holiday to start with? Never mind, that's off topic. Forget I ask.
According to Wikipedia, it's U.S., Canada, Grenada, St. Lucia, and Liberia. And some sort of connection with Germany too. But for each country, they have their own reasons why.
We watch hockey though, not football.
I don't watch football at all.
Yeah, but your football, my football isn't John's football.
Yeah.
No, that is true.
It's a different shape, right?
Yeah, but while this has been on, USA have been playing England at soccer football, and it was a 0-0 draw.
Interesting. So interesting, like NFL has made it a point to play on foreign soil this season too, right? A certain, is it 12 different games or whatnot?
I think Major League Baseball has done it also.
Oh, really?
But who's the home team? Like when both teams travel?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess neither one, really, technically. But anyways, well, enjoy your weekend. Great spending time. Thanks for helping us learn as much as we learned today with all the testing and so forth. Go share it with others. Anyways, we'll look to see you next week.
It's time for the kitchen to pull the plug.
That's right. Pull the plug in the kitchen till next Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Make a pumpkin pie.